What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Mike Dolce Show, episode 2 of Battle Tested. This time, we bring on the world's greatest strength coaches, primarily working in the world of mixed martial arts. But these coaches, as you are about to see, have extensive experience working with nearly every other sport on the planet. Today, we have Phil Daru, Dr. Andy Galpin, and Joe Defranco. These three men I hold dear as friends of mine, but also peers and sometimes competitors. We work against each other, we work with each other, but at the same time, we support each other and look towards each other for knowledge, for insight. So this is a great episode. You guys are absolutely going to love it. I do want to tell you to go to certifiedpiedmontese.com. That's Piedmontese. Certified Piedmontese is a sponsor of the Mike Dolce Show podcast and the only beef provider that we allow in the Dolce house. Get your hands on the grass-fed, grass-finished Piedmontese beef. It is amazing. It is American raised, and I cannot say enough about the team of humans at Certified Piedmontese. When the pandemic hit, Certified Piedmontese was one of the few companies that did not surge their prices. They did not raise their prices. They kept their prices static to make sure that you were not getting gouged, and still delivered meat within 2 days to your door. If you use promo code DOLCE, you will save 25% on the most amazing cuts of grass-fed, grass-finished beef delivered to your door for free in 2 days. Now, I do not get a percentage or commission on your use of that Dolce code. I want that to be clear. That is completely yours. I get no percentage on that. We're simply passing that along to you. Go to Piedmontese.com, promo code Dolce to check it out. Now, taking that into consideration, I also want you to consider going to letsgetchecked.com/Dolce, promo code Dolce for in-home blood testing services. We are so happy to be working with letsgetchecked.com/Dolce to provide you with a state-of-the-art blood testing service where you do not have to leave your home. Go to letsgetchecked.com/Dolce. Pick out any array of blood tests, which I often talk about on the Mike Dolce Show podcast, on our YouTube channel, on my Instagram lives, to which you should all be listening, and make sure that you have access to your perfect blood testing in the safety and the privacy of your own home. You don't have to leave your house, go to a doctor's office, get a prescription, schedule an appointment at LabCorp or the blood testing place, get your blood drawn there, go back home, wait 2 weeks for your results to finally come in. Go to letsgetchecked.com/Dolce, promo code Dolce. You will save 20% on in-home blood testing services. Get your total and free testosterone checked, guys. Get your cholesterol checked. Get your prostate, your PSA checked. Get your, ladies, your thyroid checked. There are so many tests at letsgetchecked.com/Dolce. You know I tell you to get your blood tested every 6 to 12 weeks. I used to say go to your doctor and get your blood tested. Now you have the ability to simply go to letsgetchecked.com/Dolce, promo code Dolce, to order your own in-home blood testing services. And guess what? The UPS driver will come back to your house, will pick it up off your porch, will bring it to letsgetchecked.com/Dolce. They will run the analysis and upload it directly to your personal app, which will be on your mobile phone within 3 days. It is amazing. I freaking love it. I love this service. It's a huge benefit to you guys. And I strongly suggest, if you're interested in living a better life and optimizing your life and taking control of your life, definitely go to letsgetchecked.com/Dolce. Use that promo code Dolce to save 20%. Wow. Now that we have the amazing sponsors, and I'm so proud to have these high-level blue-chip sponsors as a part of this podcast. They really do support you guys. They support our community, and it is an honor and a privilege to be working with them. You know that I only work with companies and programs and systems and products that I deeply respect and that I personally use. I have waved away so many big dollar sponsorships and endorsements simply because I don't believe in them. I don't use them. I would not allow them into my body or the body of my family. Therefore, I would not suggest them to you guys. The sponsors that I bring to you, the sponsors that I allow to be inside our ecosystem, I believe in, and I very happily want to share them with you. So take that under consideration. I don't want to make these ad reads very long, but I do want you to understand these places are great. And in the future, there'll be quick little mentions as we continue on. Now, I want to talk to you about this podcast with Dr. Andy Galpin, Phil Daru, and Joe Defranco. These three men are incredible. These three men are game changers. These three men are responsible in many ways for the current evolution of strength and conditioning in combat sports. Together, they work with a list of damn near half the UFC roster, I would say. Throw me in there. And I think we touch a few hundred UFC rostered athletes, multiple dozens of world champions. Now, I'm filming this after the conversation. It was awesome. It went quick. It was supposed to be 90 minutes. We went a little closer to 2 full hours. We already spoke about speaking more. We talk about periodization. We talk about the, egos inside training camp. We talk about the difference in MMA athletes versus field athletes. We talk about, training ladies, like Stefi Cohen, one of the strongest females in the world now transitioning to combat sports. We talk about getting ready for world title fights. We talk about, the different systems, the different strategies that each individual coach uses. We talk about what other coaches in the industry have been pivotal to our own approaches to sport, to what we're doing. I mean, I just have pages and pages of thoughts and conversations and topics that we've been speaking about here, MMA versus other sports. How to actually program for where you are right now. I think this is one of the greatest takeaways of this podcast for you guys is, where are you in the training? Are you a novice? Are you a beginner? Are you an intermediate? Are you advanced? Are you elite? Where do you fall into this training range? We teach you actually to understand where you fall in, and wherever that is, we teach you the best way to train through which style of periodization should you be following. And we even break down our own top 5 lists of exercises you should consider for your own personal program. Lots and lots and lots of great content, plus some backstory between everyone, where everyone got started, how everyone got into this. It's a very different approach each of us took to get to very similar positions in the world of combat sports and strength sports and being fitness professionals, which we all are in our own right. And man, I just had a blast. I look forward to part 2 of this show, and it will be out in the near future. We already spoke about setting up a new date right now to get everybody back on. And that's all I have to say. So now I just want to sit back and I want to listen to the entire show again. Are you ready? I'm ready. Let's watch the show. Hey.
Yo, what up?
What's up, everybody? Daru, Defranco.
Hey.
Galpin's coming in. What's up, Joe?
What's up, bro? Good to see you.
Fellow Jersey boy in the house. There he is. What's up, Galpin? All right.
What's up, motherfuckers?
You hear us all? There we go. Right on. I was saying, you saw in the group message, man, Defranco's actually, he gets the point over Professor Galpin.
I was on time. I was ready to go.
And you mastered technology.
Look at me.
Look at this. Right on. Fellas.
All the shit talking I did, and I couldn't even get here on time.
How West
Number
Coast
one
of you.
shit talker.
All right, boys. I'm super stoked that you guys are all here. I appreciate it. I'm very respectful of your times, busy men, family schedules, all that good stuff. So thanks for taking a little time to carve out for myself, but also for our audience. Today, we want to talk about some high-tech stuff, but also some more casual behind the scenes 4 dudes chit-chatting around a cup of coffee. So cheers. Now, I want to do a little brief intro for everybody in the room. You might have seen the previous Battle Tested. This is a new series, Battle Tested, where I bring in high level guys and gals, right? High level pros, but not the dickheads. I'll do another show with a bunch of the dickheads. We're going to talk about the dickheads in the industry a little bit later, of course. You can chime in or not, up to you. I have no problem talking about that, but not dickheads. I actually got to walk away from that so we have a nice clean intro here. But I wanted to thank you guys for being here, of course. And let me do a brief introduction, no particular order. Andy Galpin holds a PhD in human bioenergetics and an MS in human movement sciences. Andy is a full professor at Cal State Fullerton and director of the Center for Sport Performance. Andy does research and teaches in the areas of muscle physiology, strength and conditioning, and performance nutrition, as well as working with professional athletes in MLB, MMA, boxing, wrestling, and more. A few of Andy's many athletes. One would be Helen Maroulus, the Olympic freestyle gold medalist, which is an amazing athlete. We'll speak about her. And also Brian Ortega. I'm a huge fan of Ortega. Just love the kid, love the grind and all that. And also specifically what Dr. Galpin has done with Brian Ortega. Man, this show would never end if I talked about every athlete these guys deals with. So that's just a few. Moving on, we have Phil Daru. Now, Phil Daru is a world-renowned strength and conditioning coach and the founder of Daru Strong, a brand dedicated to helping one's performance, life, longevity, personal growth, and becoming the best version of themselves. Phil also owns and operates Daru Strong Performance Center in Boca Raton, Florida, and has worked with some of the most elite athletes and fighters in the world, such as former UFC world champion Joanna Jędrzejczyk, current UFC main event fighter and #1 contender, dare I say, Dustin Poirier, former UFC world champion Junior Dos Santos, amongst many other high-level, high-caliber athletes. We'll get more into Phil's background, too. And then we have Joe Defranco. Now, Joe is one of the most influential coaches in the private sector of strength and conditioning. His original Defranco's Gym created the blueprint that thousands of coaches worldwide have followed. During the last 24 years, Joe has worked with college and professional athletes from over a dozen different sports, including NFL players from all 32 teams, UFC fighters, and WWE wrestlers. You can listen to Joe every Thursday on his Industrial Strength Show podcast and also find his certification course online at cppsacademy.com. Joe very famously works with Triple H and Stephanie McMahon from the WWE, and just a list of NFL athletes, of course, MMA athletes, but NFL athletes for sure. You work with a lot of the big boys and girls out there, Joe. And I call you the Godfather of the garage gym. That name will stick here soon, because you were one of the first guys to really turn and pivot from the big box gyms and get back into the garage. So briefly, Joe, let's jump into that real quick. I want to get a little bit of individual origin story here. So in 2 minutes or so, let's condense a body of work here for you guys. Joe, how did you get into this? How did you start? How did you become the godfather of the garage gym, as I very respectfully call you? I've known about you for 20 plus years or so, and just give us a little more feedback.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So I started, my dream was always to play in the NFL. Like most of us, I think you start out as an athlete yourself. And then, you know, when you're not the 1% of the 1%, dreams get crushed. Everyone's got a different story. Mine was, I actually developed a tumor in my spine at 17, which was misdiagnosed for over 5 years, had countless, over 100 different experimental procedures, 3 different back surgeries, etc. Long sob story short, when my football career was over, I decided the next best thing was to try to help others achieve their athletic goals, because I really never achieved my ultimate goal. So, and to be quite frank, there's not much other professions that I could do competently. I'm a meathead at heart. So it's like, you got to do something in the gym or it's going to be nothing at all. So not having any money, there's not a ton of money when you're just doing some personal training here and there. The only thing I could afford was to rent out a literal storage closet at the health club that I worked out at when I was in college, and I would come home for the weekend or for holidays. I got to know the owner. I knew there was a closet in the back, the downstairs back of the gym that they were just storing old equipment. I asked them, if I clean that out, throw a fresh coat of paint on it, and pay you rent each month, would you let me train some athletes and clients out of there? He was ecstatic because he was getting, he was actually charging me $1,600 for a storage closet. Welcome to New Jersey prices. So yeah, $1,600. That was as cheap as I could find for 500 square feet. I had 3 pieces of equipment, started training high school kids. And, the rest is history. Those high school kids brought in some friends. They ended up going to college. College kids became NFL players. Next thing you knew, at one point, I had 11 different players from the New York Giants training there. And I had 7 high school kids that trained in the storage closet in high school that ended up making it to the NFL. And then grew from there and opened up a garage gym that I could call my own, and then expanded again into a 5,000 square foot facility. And then a couple of years after that, we opened up and we're training people out of the Onnit Academy. And so we've had a bunch of different gyms, but it all started in a literal storage closet.
Damn, nice, brother. And Andy, how about you? Sitting down there, slightly different career path, but oddly, we all kind of end up in the same, circle.
Yeah, sure. I mean, and just to be forthright here, Joe's probably coached more athletes in a week than I have in my entire career, and Phil's probably done it in a month. So I'm quite different than the rest of these two gentlemen, what I would consider to be actual, real, true practitioners. So my background, I didn't play any combat sport of any kind, really. I wasn't even involved in it at all. So I played all the traditional sports, played college football. But then when I got my master's degree, I just started to become very interested in the combat sports for a host of reasons. But number one, scientifically, I just didn't see any stuff there. And I didn't see people addressing, or I saw people trying to address these sports like you would address your more standard sports. And it just didn't make sense physiologically. So then going on as a PhD student, I started participating in these sports myself and was like, man, this is just, it's breaking all the rules. It's doing everything different than what we're taught to do in class, and there's these gaps, and it just doesn't work that way. These folks are doing things pretty extraordinary that we wouldn't be taught possible, or there's just not a science behind it. And so that's where my interest became. So initially as a participant myself, and then started working with low-level guys and girls, mostly my teammates, and then built from there. So got out here to California, started our labs and started making connections, and then, worked my way up, if you will. So my interest is that way. It's, trying to figure out what can we learn scientifically, as well as, the opposite. How can we bridge these gaps, and how can we change the general things we're teaching our undergrads about strength conditioning, exercise physiology, performance nutrition, based on what we're seeing these athletes do that we previously, thought was not possible or didn't make sense or what have you. So the other part of it is, I guess, the reason I chose combat sports is, I had actually a background in the NFL. I actually started working with Major League Baseball and NFL in 2004. And so I've done that and enjoyed that, but there's just something different when someone puts their heart and soul, in this case, their physical body, on the line. And the time I got into the sport, like all of you guys, especially you, Mike, and Phil, who actually did the sport professionally. At that time, there was no money, there was no fame. And so I was like, man, I can do the NFL, and there's your income and there's your fame and stuff. But I just really wanted to work with people who are giving everything possible, their entire life, their food, social, physical body, to something, and no one's going to ever know or care. And there's no money involved, really. And that was just something I was like, you know what, I got a job, I have a steady income, I need something for my soul. And the NFL just wasn't that for me. Major League Baseball wasn't that, but combat sports were. And so that's why I chose to focus a lot on those, even though I don't come from that background, or didn't grow up in a Taekwondo family or anything like that. So that's how I got into it.
Right on. And then Phil, how did you end up doing what you're doing now? And I've watched your career change a few times. We're going to talk a little bit more about different business models that we all run, but your origin story for, kind of the elevator pitch from where you started to where you are now, really the why behind it.
So it's funny because if you merge like Mike and Joe's past, that would be me. You know, I've had my own facility. I still own my own facility. Started off in a warehouse facility like Joe. Actually, honestly, I already know Joe's whole past. I probably heard it about 15,000 times, like we all have. And for Mike, again, we started out in an MMA gym. You know, same concept. But when I was a young kid, I did Kempo karate. That was primarily what my sport was at the time. Played some football at a young age, probably about 7, 8 years old. Stopped doing Kempo karate at the age of 13, 14 years old, really got serious with football, which led me to learn how to strength train. And that's kind of where I actually ended up looking at all of Joe's old stuff, you know, all the way back from West Side for Skinny Bastards. Like we talked about this plenty of times. And just learning that. Going forward, played college football for Alabama State University. Obviously undersized. I'm 5'8", 205, kind of like a Bob Sapp. You guys remember Bob Sapp?
Of course. Come on now.
It was kind of like that, you know, but I had a large amount of injuries occurring due to the fact that I would just like throw my head into everybody. And again, being a wedge buster on the kickoff team at about 195 pounds at 5'8", really didn't work out too well. A lot of pinched nerves and concussions led to my demise in football. So I started doing MMA basically because I wanted to compete. I wanted to keep training. I wanted to do something, you know, that was going to push myself. And so I found a gym that was close nearby where my parents actually moved from. I'm originally from South Florida, where the HQ of American Top Team is located. And I found an affiliate gym close where my parents stayed. And it was an ATT affiliate gym owned by Dean Thomas. So I went to my first class and started training, loved it. I didn't want to do jiu-jitsu at the time. I was more of a stand-up striker guy, you know, and it took some getting used to, but I finally took to it and then took my amateur career to where it needed to be, turned pro at the age of 21. At the same time, I was doing strength and conditioning with my teammates and then basically just trying to find ways to make some money. So I would train people in like, you know, Gold's Gym. I'd sneak them into LA Fitness, things of that nature. So shout out to LA Fitness and Gold's Gym for letting me make my money. Then after that, I was like, all right, well, I need to find a spot to train my athletes and train myself. And so I found a strength and conditioning gym that reminded me a lot of Joe's gym. So I was like, this is perfect, right? Because this is how I wanted to train. This is how I wanted, or how I see myself training my guys. So I started doing that. And then by about, I want to say a year and a half later, opened up my own facility, which was about 800 square feet. So I got a little upper hand on Joe a little bit. I'm just kidding. Not at all. But anyway, so about 6 to 8 months into that, we opened up a bigger facility. It was about 1,900 square feet, which was actually the old Dean Thomas American Top Team. So I moved into there, started doing my strength and conditioning. I opened up Daru Fitness Performance and grew that gym. At the time, I probably had about 50 members. Within the next year, I had about 300 members. It grew very fast, exponentially fast. I would say almost too fast. And at that same time, I was a pro fighter, still trying to make what I could out of it, and was accumulating these injuries, and especially from a concussion standpoint, I was definitely getting rocked more so than I should have been, and mainly because of just training, not even really the fight. And then accumulation from football, past injuries, things of that nature, caused me to really, you know, have to retire pretty much from the sport of MMA at the age of 26. And so from there, I was kind of stuck. I wanted to still be a part of the sport, but I knew I couldn't compete. So I called up Dean Thomas and I asked him, you know, do you have anybody that you would want me to work with down at American Top Team? Because I knew that he was coaching there full time now. And he goes, you know what, you may be in luck if you get your resume together. Once you come down, and we'll see what we can do. So I got my resume real quick, ran down there. It's about a 90-minute drive from where I stay. Ran down there the first day. It was actually the first night. I handed in my resume, and they're like, all right, go ahead, train these 3 guys. And those 3 guys were Hector Lombard, Dustin Poirier, and King Mola Wall. So it's kind of thrown into the fire a little bit, but They loved the training. And I stayed for about a month and a half before they finally put me on staff as a full-time strength and conditioning coach. At the same time, I ended up selling my bigger gym gym, and then opening up a smaller facility next to my house where I can do more personal training and work with guys that I need to that still are up where I'm at. And then also I could train myself too. So did that for about, I want to say 5 years, and really grew my brand and helped a lot of people. We won some titles, really good. Met a lot of great people at American Top Team. So again, I was fortunate enough to be a part of that. Then opened up my own facility in Boca Raton as I am there now, and still have about 25 UFC fighters. I have 3 judo Olympians, and I have about 5 professional boxers and two-time world champion Maureen Shea, who's actually going for another WBC title pretty soon in March. So still rocking and rolling in my own spot, and I'm loving it. So this is where we're at now.
Awesome, fellas. There's lots of, obviously everyone has a different road, but there's a lot of similarities in the process. Now, I wanted to focus a little bit more and be a little more MMA specific here. And I wanted to get your opinion now on what's the difference between an MMA athlete and the other field sport athletes, primarily. And you can throw some tennis in there per se, but really you look at a lot of the other field athletes, like an NFL athlete, an NBA athlete, MLB, soccer, football, whatever you want to call that. But really the MMA, the combat athlete, we'll leave the wrestlers out of this conversation. So specifically dealing with mixed martial artists, what is the difference in training with an MMA athlete? And particularly, we're all experienced at the UFC level, so we'll use that as the avatar right now. The difference in training a UFC athlete as compared to their counterparts in the other traditional field sports. And I will say, in my experience, the field athletes are more diligent. I think because of the system that they're raised within. Typically they go through the collegiate system. They're used to more of accountability, checks and balances. This has been their craft in many ways since adolescence. They've gone through puberty, swinging the bat, throwing the ball, if you will. So they've already had a lot of reps in the system, in training. They've gone through different coaching systems. Where mixed martial artists, even in modern era right now, UFC goes back to 93. It's not that old of a sport, but there's still a lot of, and again, this is just my opinion and my experience, MMA is still very laissez-faire as far as the mindset of the athlete. The athletes usually come from other disciplines, like some of us did, and I don't want to say washed out, but got hurt, got injured, got to a certain level, and, was a star in high school, and man, couldn't even make D3, like whatever that might be. But again, now, Andy, I'll jump over to you. Whether it's what the mental issue is, what the personal outside influences are, or just the physicality, frame it, any way you want. What do you see as the biggest difference in you as a coach training MMA athletes versus your other stable of athletes?
It's 3 things that stand out for me. Number one, they typically have a much lower physical training age, right? So almost every athlete I've ever dealt with in other sports, as you alluded to, Mike, they come from some strength and conditioning background. They've been through it before. Many combat athletes have very little, if any. Number 2, I don't know a single professional fighter or any combat athlete who doesn't train more than once per day, right? Field sport athletes, they work out once, that's it. Almost never are they working out twice a day. Every fighter is going to go twice a day, most days a week or close to it. And then number 3 is the MMA fighters don't have the logistics down like the other sports. So if you're working with the baseball player, that they're playing at 7 o'clock every day and they're working out at noon or whatever the case, NBA, you name it. MMA fighters, the schedule may change every week. They have no idea where they're going. There's no head coach. It's just the logistics aren't there. So the structure's not there. So they're not used to being professional athletes. So some of them still live like amateur athletes or have to have other means. Now, most of the folks we work with don't have to deal with that anymore, but they still don't have the structure. They don't have a daily set thing. We can't set their, I'm sure you two deal with this all the time with all the volume of athletes you have. Like trying to set their schedule months in advance, you're like, there's no chance, right? It's almost a day by day of like, when can you work out? Okay, I can't. So you can't periodize, program, plan. Like I can with my baseball players, so I know exactly where they're going to be every day for a year out, basically. So those are the 3 things that jump out to me the most.
That's a great point. And then, I want to put a tab in the periodization. That's actually going to be the next question after this, just so you guys know. I want to speak about the different periodization concepts for MMA versus others, but also the challenge Andy just brought up. So, Joe, to you, what's the difference between you running an MMA athlete and then you running all your other athletes? Where do you see morally the difference or the conflict?
Yeah, I mean, everything Andy just spoke about, I'm like shaking my head because it's just so true. Coming from training so many football players, like strength and conditioning is part of their world. Like since you started playing, it's just you lift weights in the off season and you train in season. It's just part of what they do. And when I started working with more MMA athletes, I was kind of shocked because they have so much. Why I love it, and it's because it's so challenging, and the it's like putting pieces of a puzzle together, because they need to be just proficient in so many different things. It's such a difficult, the most demanding sport. So many different biomotor abilities. They have to have strength, speed, power, endurance, agility. Like you need everything as an MMA fighter. Yet then we have to throw something else on top of there. It's like, well, you still need a kind of training season for some of those general abilities, but where do you throw that in? Because they're already working out 2-3 times a day, maybe at 2-3 different gyms, which is the other thing. The logistics is a real thing. So I quickly found that out. There's a lot more moving parts. Communication is huge. You can't just, again, to Andy's point, I can't write out a nice periodized 12-week program and think everything's going to go according to plan. It doesn't work that way. Like I'll come up with a template and have an idea of what I want to do, but it's day by day. You're kind of measuring their readiness. What's their body language? What did you do before you got here? And then being in constant contact with the other coaches, their jiu-jitsu coach, their boxing coach. Like communication is so important. You can't have an ego. You have to remember we're in this to help the athlete, not just for them to do my program because I wrote it down on paper and my ego's so big that they have to do it exactly as written. It's you have to, put the athlete first, and there's a lot to cover because as an MMA athlete, they really need everything.
Agreed. And it's, that's another topic we're going to be speaking about is the ego clash amongst coaches. And oftentimes it's to a detriment of the athlete and the entire camp, unfortunately. So we'll circle back to that one. Now, Phil, to finish with you, your thoughts, MMA versus other field athletes per se, how do you see the difference? Biggest differences?
To piggyback off of what these guys said, it's the same concept. It's like, with a lot of these things, they have to train multiple modalities of the week throughout the days. So managing fatigue is definitely going to be more of a hierarchy of importance because they definitely need to make sure that they're getting their skills training in. That's very important. On the other hand, we also have to change their mindset towards strength and conditioning. For the most part, it's mainly from outside influences or something that they've heard in the gym, like skills coaches or let's say anybody who has that old school mentality of thinking that strength and conditioning is just bodybuilding or just strength training or powerlifting, trying to give them an understanding of why we're actually doing certain movements and why we're doing certain types of methodologies to enhance their quality of a fight prep, right? Enhance the quality of a fighter itself. Like I said, yeah, and Joe said it too. It's like, yeah, we want to have a structured framework, but there isn't any time where I'm not auto-regulating. Like, for the most part, they're coming in with bumps and bruises on a daily basis, as opposed to, let's say I got college football kids, I got high school football kids. I know exactly when their season is. I know exactly when their off season is. I know when to periodize if we need to, setting up a solid system there. But with the fighters, like I got a guy coming in to camp now. He had a fight in 8 weeks, and now they pushed it back to 12 weeks. So now he's kind of in limbo. Whereas if I would have set that up, then all that time I took trying to develop this intricate, detailed out fucking program is, put to the wayside now because now we have to formulate a new strategy. So for that, it's always going to be auto-regulated. It's always going to have some type of fatigue management. And you also, again, like these two gentlemen said, communication and having the ability to allow that athlete to get what they need at that particular time is more important, and what we see different from, any other sport athlete.
Sure. Now, one of the areas I think we've all run into, some publicly and maybe some not as much, is the ego, and the ego in camp, unfortunately. Now, everyone has their own role, and I always try and illustrate, for years now, I've always said I use the Microsoft model. The athletes, Bill Gates, they hire a team of directors, department directors, divisional directors, executives, C-suites, which have you. We all need to work together to build the vision of Bill Gates, of the boss here, the CEO, the owner. Now, Bill isn't writing code, right? He's not designing keyboards and laptops, but he's overseeing it, and it's his ultimate vision. Now, we need to all speak with each other and make sure everything works when it ties together. I do like more of that corporate mentality as we move forward. And that's caused friction for me, because other coaches, they don't like that. They don't like, weekly, jot form sheets and check-ins and, trying to understand, how is the athlete? How did he perform today? Give me a rating of, 1 through 5, 1 through 10. What are you doing? What are the goals of the week? A lot of coaches don't like that stuff, and that's fine. It's not for me to tell them what to do, but it makes everyone's individual job that much harder, even if it's just a simple phone call. Let's get 30 minutes once a week. Let's have a chit chat of what we're all trying to accomplish here. God, just to make sure that we're not beating the fuck out of this poor athlete, right? Maybe he got into a fight with his old lady last night. Maybe his dad's super sick and he's making trips 2 hours across the city to take care of dad and take mom grocery shopping. Like, all this is real stuff that happens. But he shows up to practice on Monday morning, and the fucking wrestling coach wants to drill him, 2 hours, fucking 2 hours live goes, shot, reshots, situations, let's go nonstop. And he's supposed to spar that night, or whatever that might be. And the strength coach, let's say it's all strength coach, and I know you guys also, touch on the nutrition side, Andy probably more so than anybody else here. There's a hell of a lot of stuff going on. And the individual athlete is then suffering because the lack of communication amongst the coaches. Ultimately, I believe that's mostly because of ego in many ways. I don't want this fucking, bodybuilder dude or whatever, this, fucking nutrition dork to tell me what to do. Like, I'm a fucking black belt. I won this tournament. That attitude comes in. And then you got the wrestling coach versus the jiu-jitsu coach. You got the boxing coach versus the Muay Thai coach. You have the long-term fucking been with the kid for 10 years coach versus the new high-level MMA head coach. Man, then you got the manager, you got the wife, you got the brother-in-law, the dad. It becomes a shit show. And this is, I'm speaking to the choir here with you guys, but also to the viewers and the listeners. They might not really, grasp all the stuff that's going on. And I spoke about it with the diet guys in the last show. There's a whole fucking storm that's constantly floating around these athletes. And unfortunately, it's our jobs, it's your jobs to really put it all together to unfuck all the fuck ups, in my opinion, of a lot of the other coaches. Non-intentionally, because they just want what's best for the athlete, but they're not communicating very efficiently. And I think we all can shoulder the blame for that as a group and as a team. But for you specifically, and if you want to share any personal anecdotes, I'd certainly love to hear them. You can refrain from using names or throw someone straight under the bus, which is always good for, virality of these videos. But what do you say is best case scenario? And I will also add, should you be in charge of the programming of the overall training camp? And I will say, more than likely, a competent strength coach is likely best suited to program the entire camp. And then, of course, give the skills coaches autonomy to teach what they should teach during their sessions, right? We're not coming up with game plan of how to go out and beat Conor McGregor per se, but once we understand what the overall strategy is, then Phil can really come in and build the overall framework of a program that will best facilitate that strategy and goal. So, Joe, let me jump into you first on this one. How do you look at that? Number one is the ego clash, and just kind of speak on it for a few minutes here. Personal experience, best way to fix it, and then are you possibly the best one, or maybe not? Maybe it's the jits coach. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that might be individual with each athlete as far as who should be the one in charge. I do feel like a competent strength and conditioning coach. I know I'm not a Brazilian jiu-jitsu coach, but I think I could lay out a week that is organized for the athlete, maybe as good as anyone. Like, hey, do your skills training on these days. This is where your strength and conditioning is going to go. Not saying you have to do everything, but I think from organizing the template for the week, yes, a competent strength and conditioning coach can and maybe should be that guy most of the time. I did want to say this, though. I think I always like, because there are so many egos, at the end of the day, hopefully the one thing we can all agree on is we're all here because we want to help this athlete succeed. So how do we do that? It starts with some kind. I know we're talking about UFC fighters at the highest level, but most people watching, if you work with MMA athletes at the amateur level or any athlete at any sport, it's getting that athlete, evaluating them, having some type of an assessment, seeing where they're at. And then we use the term, finding the athlete's window of greatest the window of greatest trainability, or the window of greatest adaptation, I should say, is like, so if an athlete comes in to my gym and he already squats 600 pounds, but he can't bend over and tie his shoes without tearing his hammy off the bone, we know we don't need to spend much time on maximal strength training. Like, we know if this is an aspiring MMA fighter, he's going to need, the majority of his week needs to go towards technical skill training. We use like the going out to dinner analogy. If you have your appetizer, you have your main course, and you have dessert, like, what's going to be the main course for this athlete? Technical skills, MMA training, main course. Appetizer, mobility. And like the dessert, the icing on the cake, maybe we just do some maintenance strength because he's already strong. We don't need to spend much time on that. So I think having some measurable metrics, saying this is where this athlete's at, this is where he's strong, this is where he's weak, this is where most of the training needs to take place. Now let's organize the week and divvy it up. I think that's where you could all get on the same page and say, listen, if we're trying to get him from point A to point B, can we all agree on this is what he needs the most of, this is what he needs the least of, this is in between, and now let's all use our expertise to do our job. And the old Charlie Francis fill the glass concept. We only have so much capacity each week. An athlete has so much capacity each week. Every time they train, it's like pouring some water into that cup. And the goal is to fill that cup without having it overspill, and you start overreaching. And at that point, that kind of like, an analogy for overtraining, whatever you want to call it, higher potential for injury. But I think that's where it all starts, a good assessment, and then see where we're going to get the best bang for our buck with the training. Where are we going to see the most progress, and then design the program or write out the template from there.
Gotcha. So all in all, you should be in charge of the programming of the camp.
I think so. At least
put words in your mouth.
At least coming up with the calendar and mapping out the training week. Yes.
Yep. And with that, in many ways, the strength coach is not vested from an ego perspective in the actual skills blocks during the week. There's no greed for that. Most of the strength coaches, I don't want to say happy, but they're accepting of maybe a 1 every 5 day touch of the athlete, as long as the athlete's doing what they're supposed to be doing, understanding the enormous amount of volume the athlete is training under. Now, in season versus off season, I'm speaking a little bit more towards that in season phase. Off season, the strength coach gets a little bit more touches of the athlete every other day, every third day or so. So Phil, now you, same thing. Who should be responsible ultimately for the best case scenario of the camp and of the athlete? And then if you care to share any friction points you might have had in your past.
Mike, we ain't going there today.
Come on, bro.
But I will say this.
I fucking go there. I don't give a fuck.
So for me, I do think that somebody with a background like Andy, who understands biomotor abilities, biochemistry, he understands fatigue management, you can look at it from that microscope and kind of categorize what's going to be appropriate for that athlete based off of the assessments. I'm going to look at rate limiting factors. I'm going to look at compensation patterns. Then I'm also going to look at their overall game. So if I have a very elite level fighter, I know that they're efficient with whatever movement pattern is going to be inside the cage. Now I'm going to take almost like a bottoms up approach or something. And I would basically see, okay, how well can they generally move? And then from there, I can work my way into it. But to answer your question, I definitely think that a strength and conditioning coach and the head MMA coach should be the two that communicate the most. And then everyone else around that kind of follows suit. The problem here is this. With MMA gyms, it's a team atmosphere. So you have team practices. So that team practice is already set for that particular time. So as a strength and conditioning coach, I find myself doing more of catering towards or working around those team practices, because those practices are mandatory unless you're a guy like Dustin Poirier or something along the lines of that, right? But most of the guys, and these are UFC caliber athletes, they're going to have to go to these team practices. So then I'm going to look at that team practice. I'm going to look at the intensities from an RPE standpoint, and I'm going to measure out, okay, do I want to consolidate these stresses on that particular day so that one, we can recover the next day and they're not hammering themselves to death every day? Then I'll do that. That's where I come in when I structure out an entire program or when I structure out a schedule for that particular athlete, especially in camp, because even though they are efficient, game planning, tactical, and strategy is going to be more important at that particular time, looking at around 8 to 6 weeks out. Now, off camp, yes, I want to have at least 3, maybe 4 times a week with them. And then I want to be hands-on with either the person that's doing their weight cut or myself to make sure that we reassure that they are bringing down their weight and everything else. And then having that communication with all those other coaches, because we all know that the MMA coach, the jiu-jitsu coach, the wrestling coach are all going to try to hammer them and make sure that they get the best out of them, right? The problem there is that they try to turn it into a conditioning session where that's our job, right? So at the end of the day, I'm not over here trying to teach them any skills training. I'm actually trying to get them better from a general perspective that can enhance their specific abilities. So for me, I have to make sure that we have that communication and there's some agreement there. And I work with now different camps. So I even work with Kelvin Gastelum. He's all the way out in California. So I'm working with him remotely. I work with Bilal Muhammad, who's out in New York. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of communication that needs to be done. And I have to constantly check in on them. So getting back to the question, I think that, yes, we should be able to do it. Is that going to happen and is going to always be like that? Probably not, because there is a lot of egos in the game and a lot of people feel like they are the top dog, and rightfully so. If you're a world champion in MMA and you become a coach like a Mike Brown or someone along the lines of that, then that makes sense. But at the same time, you also have to give the respect to the other professional that's working on their overall preparation from a general strength perspective, from a conditioning perspective, all of that.
Yep. And you mentioned Mike Brown, and Mike Brown, I think, is one of the few coaches in MMA who doesn't have that ego issue that we've all run into. In my experience with Brown anyway, Mike is one of the more patient coaches and open-minded coaches. Mike is really in it for the athlete. You don't hear Mike get the accolades he probably deserves just to give him a little bit of bump in this conversation. So I think if every camp had a Mike Brown running it, I think a lot of these camps would go a hell of a lot smoother. We'd probably see less injuries from a lot of athletes. And of course, no camp is perfect and things happen across the board, but getting more of the science mind involved. And then Andy, of course, your turn here to jump in. I see you nodding your head on some of the points that I agree with, but I'd love to get your take on this. And, you know, you certainly do have a lot of experience, and you don't work with the volume, as you said, like Phil or Joe, as far as total athletes, but you're actually in the lab a hell of a lot more than any of us. I think none of us, you know, have in our careers combined probably have the experience of what you have in a single day of literally being in the lab and going through the data. I know, Phil, you do quite a bit with that also, but Andy, that's where you live and breathe. So I'd love to get your take from kind of a different set of lenses here.
Yeah, first, this is why the West Coast is indeed so much better than the East Coast.
Oh boy.
And what I mean by that is
mute.
You know, like Phil's got the one advantage, man. He's got 50 UFC fighters in one gym.
Yeah.
Or close, whatever that number is, it's close, right? When you come to California, you have 50 UFC fighters, but they're in 40 gyms.
Yeah.
So we have a different problem, right? Like Phil knows practices at noon and 2 and 4 and 6. He knows the days and stuff, and he knows most likely what those practices are going to look like. I have the opposite problem. I don't have a fucking clue where they're going. They got 60 different coaches. They got traffic and so the advantage I get with those fighters is I get to determine their schedules. And so the initial question you had here, this is what I spend more time doing, is figuring out that how do I put all these pieces together. And so I have a lot more leeway and leverage than Joe and Phil probably have, because I get to control schedules almost always, like top to bottom, including when you're going to go to wrestling practice, when you're going to go to striking practice. And no, we're going at 6 because this is better. Coach, you need to change your time. Like things like that, right? And this doesn't always work like that, but I have that leverage because, you know, again, usually the practice is not, you know, I don't have 50 guys all trying to come at the same time. It's 2 or 3 or 4, and it's all being mixed and changed. To me, this answer boils down to accountability. And what I mean by that is I come from, and I know Joe does too, the NFL. And I come from things like that where it is very clear who's responsible for what and who's accountable for what. And MMA, I've found that to be very minimal. People tend to be very childish and babies, in large part, really for being big, tough guys and girls. They're really kind of chicken shit sometimes with this side of the equation. So in other words, I'm not offended if a coach sits me down and says like, hey, your job was to do X. We see it on film. You did not do X. Therefore, you're not playing. You're fired. You're gone, or somebody else is getting your job, whatever the case might be. And we have those conversations. And the next week you beat the guy out and now you're up and they're sitting back. And you can be tight-knit team and still have that accountability, right? It's okay to be told you suck today, to go up and down and rank a little bit. This is how those worlds work, right? And it's not personal. You try that shit in MMA, it gets personal and that team hates you. That coach is gone, they never want to deal with you, blah, 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 right? And so what I make sure I do whenever I walk into an athlete, because I don't walk into teams, right? I don't work with X team or Y team. I work with individuals who might be on X's team. And a good example, you know, I have one girl that I'm trying to push down to Phil as much as possible. And it hasn't worked out yet because she can't get a fight. But like that's the best case scenario is when they have a real coach down there. And I'm like, no, go work with Phil. I'm telling you, because this will make my job easier. Because now I don't have to handle that side because we've got a real pro in that department. And I can do other stuff because you don't have a pro in these departments. So I'm very clear with them when I ask them when I start, like, what role do you want me to play specifically? And I will be as big or as small. Do you want me to just do your diet? Fine, no problem. Oh, you have a great strength conditioning coach, Phil? Absolutely. I don't touch your strength conditioning. That guy's a pro. Or the opposite, right? I have some where I'm like, oh, you're working with Dr. Capo? Well, fantastic nutrition. Got it. Oh, you don't have a strength coach? Okay, let me be your strength coach. Or anything in between. You need me to be a facilitator. You got a good this, and this, and you want me to just put the science and figure out schedule and logistics and how to optimize you and peak you at the right time. And those folks don't have to worry about it. Yep. Bam, I can do that, right? But at the end of the day, we all sit down before camp starts and after camp, and there's an accountability session. And I want to do this face-to-face where we sit down together, and this is our team, right? Mike, you're the wrestling coach, and Joe, you're the striking coach, and Phil's the strength conditioning coach. And we go through first and foremost, how does this athlete win this fight? How does they lose this fight? And I want your opinion, right? Because I'm not the skill coach, and it's not, a lot of times it's pretty predictable, right? But in case it's not, we hash that out in front of each other. So we can't go behind each other's back and be like, no, this is a wrestling fight. And then Joe goes, no, this is a striking fight. And Phil goes, no, this is all about getting faster. And now all three of us think we're the top priority. So we sit down in that room and we don't leave until we all understand, how do we win this fight? How do we lose this fight? Now that we know that, what do we need to do? And we use a 10-point system, right? So you have 10 points you can spend. It's Joe, it's to fill the cup, right? So the cup has 10 total points. What do we want to spend it on? 2 on strength conditioning. All right, I'll break it up. 2 on strength or speed or power, 2 on conditioning, 6 on wrestling. I mean, where are the points going? And we're all in an agreement with where those points go before the room leaves. And then as we're going in camp, the accountability is set, right? You told me in front of the athlete, we all agreed upon this, that coach, I know, I'm sorry, you're a wrestling guy, but you're getting 1 out of 10 this camp. So now when you're doing these extra workouts, we're telling you that this is a green workout form or a yellow workout. And then I hear you did 16 extra rounds at the end. You either got excited one day, okay, all right, like that happens. I mean, no problem, whatever. But if this is a pattern, it's like you're either lying to me or you're lying to the athlete, or you're clearly more important than the rest of the team. What's up? And you got to admit that in front of the whole group because we all agreed upon it. They get extensive, lengthy documents that outline everything for the whole camp. What are we doing? How color code is simplified for coach speak. It's right in front of you. You had it. I actually laminate it and give it to you in person. It's in your office. It's right there. The athlete has it too. So if I'm looking at it, we all coaches see what the workout is for Monday morning. That's not detail, of course, but it may be wrestling green, whatever. And it's like you smoked and you knew sparring was going to happen that night. You've ruined it for the athlete. Again, once or twice, okay, fine, things happen sometimes. But if this is a pattern and now it's just accountability, all right, you're not showing up, you're not performing your part. What do you want to do, athlete? You're the CEO, you're Bill Gates. Am I out? Are they out? Do you not believe me? Like, what do you want me to do? And if you want me to just like shut up and get in the corner, that's my rule, fine. Most likely find somebody else. But I mean, in camp, I'm not going to ruin a performance, right? But after camp, like, yeah, I'm not doing this situation again. This is the deal here, right? You all just swallow it before the fight, get through it. So that's how I approach this as much as possible. It doesn't always work that way. It is hard to get these coaches all together to sit down, but the times we've been able to pull that off, it's made a monumental difference, simply because we all know who's there, who's supposed to do what, and there's no more disagreement. So the athlete's not sitting in the middle going like, God, the wrestling coach thinks it's wrestling. And they don't have to deal with that. It's clear. And
Agreed.
then at the end of the fight, we can go back and say, look, we screwed up. We shouldn't have given 6 to wrestling. That was a mistake, whatever, but we know what happened and it's nobody's fault because we all agreed upon it. And so no one has to be like, fuck, like get Joe out of here because he didn't do what he was supposed to do. It's like, well, we gave him 2 out of 10 and why we expected that the athlete didn't do great in that area. That was all of our mistake for not prioritizing the right thing. And he doesn't have to worry about getting fired because he's like, you give me 2 workouts a week. What was I supposed to do?
Yep. And to follow up on that briefly, in your experience, how often have you been able to implement that protocol successfully by percentage of out of the 100% of training camps? Is it 18%? Is it 80% of camps that they actually let you come in with that system?
80.
Wow.
That's what I do. This is basically what I'm not a full-time strength coach like these guys with 100 athletes. What I do, it's high touch, it's high time throughout the day, but I can't scale this, right? Like something like this, because along with this comes accountability daily, right? What did you do for practice? Can I go? Can I watch? Whatever. And there's lots of check-ins. So my hours are high throughout the day, but so I can only do 2 or 3 of these, or a little maybe more than that at a time. If I can't do that, I honestly just generally don't take on the situation because that's where my skill set is best in those areas. So there have been some where it is closer to that lower percentage, and it's just best I probably don't. You can find what you need for cheaper prices or somebody else. So
go ahead.
I want to ask Andy one thing. Andy, are you breaking down like statistics based off of past fights, and then obviously you're communicating with those other coaches to see exactly what is the most or the highest priority for that particular fighter?
I will not break down the fight metrics.
Yeah.
That is something I will ask the fighter. And so I have a whole system and points and documents that we use, but that's something I'll use with the fighter and the striking coach. So I'll ask the striking coach for the striking statistics. I'll ask the wrestling coach for the wrestling statistics, and their perception of what's going to happen moving forward. The strength coach for their data, if they have them. Oftentimes they don't. They don't have true, they don't have force plates. They don't have any of these metrics from that side. But I'll come to those. If I have to do it, I will myself, because you will have some striking coaches that they don't know. Like they just teach combinations and stuff like that, but they don't really pay attention to that level of detail. That's cool. Mm-hmm. So that's how I'll approach it.
Got it. Awesome. And then to spice it up a little bit and give a little bit of a story, how this actually can fuck an athlete. I was working with an athlete a few years back, and I'd been working with the athlete for a while. I had a very successful career together, but the athlete was one of the better known athletes in the industry, one of the better paid athletes in the industry. And of course, kind of wielded a very powerful brand inside his small circle, of course, amongst his coaches, to which he had 8 specific coaches, and they were very interchangeable. Very rarely would 2 or 3 coaches from camp to camp actually stay. And I was one of the coaches that was, kind of long-term, multi-years with the athlete. But in time, lifestyle habits certainly come through. And most of the time that we worked together was really mediating damage, off-season damage, poor decision damage, lifestyle damage, right? I found my job really focusing more on, I was 100% weight management, nutrition, and then I bridged the gap on kind of strength conditioning and also kind of overview, programming for the athlete. And as they were going forward in their career, they decided to drop a weight class. All right, drop a weight class. Now that's a big fucking undertaking. Personally, I felt the athlete was physically better suited for the lower weight class, but I wanted to see a full year to transition from one class to the other, which would have allowed them to still compete at the higher weight class, just at slightly smaller, lighter relative body mass, but hopefully as a more capable athlete, a better athlete. Working with their agent and manager, I think fight selection would have been very helpful to get, let's get a smaller opponent inside that bigger weight class as we make our way through. And the organization was very excited about this change. And it would have added an extra 0 to the back of the athlete's paycheck because the lower division was pretty thin at the time, hence the drop. Big opportunity. So as we're going through and I'm doing my thing, and this time I'm running our full facility in Vegas. I have 12 W-2'd employees, registered dietitians, exercise physiologists, all kind of like a think tank, not a gym at all. We were literally kind of open floor cubicle concept, lots of consulting and programming at this point. And there was a lot of starts and stops. The athlete would get hurt because they'd party, they'd stay up late, they'd go and binge, they'd have their Sunday fun day, they'd fucking blow up in weight. And I love diagnostics to the best of our ability to get it. So I want the athlete in a bod pod every 6 weeks or so. And then some other form of diagnostic. I want to get blood work every 12 weeks or so, maybe even more frequently, depending on what we see in the 12-week panel. And then they had access to a DEXA scan. So we'd pull a bod pod every 6 weeks or so, a DEXA scan every 6 weeks. So every 12 weeks, it'd be a new DEXA per se. Or at least the threat of a DEXA, just to hopefully keep them fuck, I can't get too fat because coach is going to know, and they know that we're going to know. So as they're moving forward, a couple fight offers come and go, but the little phantom injuries creep up here and there, fights get canceled. And every time a fight would get canceled or moved, the athlete would blow up in weight instead of staying diligent. And it was a struggle. Right? For me to really try and get in their head, you want to be at this lower weight class. Whether or not you have a fight at that weight class doesn't matter. Let's get you walking around as the best athlete in the world at that weight class. That's the goal, and stop with the fucking party boy mentality here. So finally the athlete gets a real fight at the new weight class, and it's 11 weeks out or so. The athlete goes into camp. All right, great. Bang, here's the nutrition plan. Here's what we want to see. Let's get, let's get a new blood panel done. Let's get a DEXA done. Let's get some, hydration testing done. Let's really see where you're at as we go into this. Let's share it with the coaches and make sure we're all on board. Because I had some sneaking suspicions that this was going to be a shit show, as it already was a shit show. There was so many egos already involved. And what's the worst thing about some of these egos? They wanted so much control without any of the care or responsibility of that control. What they say goes, because to Phil's point and to everyone's point here, they're a world champion and they won this and they competed at this level, 5, 8, 20 years or so ago or more. Or they coached an athlete who did well once upon a time. Everyone's great at this level. Fucking great. So many egos. All right, let's get it on paper. Let's get the email chain going. Let's share the data so everybody sees it. These are what I'd like to see kind of moving forward. Now, this is where the problem comes in. So we see the athlete is at one specific body weight and is fucking big. Not fat per se, but too big for the weight class. But we still have enough time. Had the athlete done what we wanted them to do over the last 6 months or so, we'd already be within striking distance of making weight had we had a really solid 6 months instead of all the stops and goes. Now, moving forward, the athletes say, hey, listen, coach, I don't need you to come out anymore like you used to stay with me because I got this under control. I'm newly married. I'm a new man. I'm not the party boy anymore. Hey, all right, fucking cool, man. I don't want to be, changing your fucking diapers, pardon my language, during training camp 3 weeks out. I got my own wife. I got my own kids. I got my own thing going on. Awesome. Great. Now, like you guys, my schedule books up. I'm booked up, 4 months in advance, hard booking, opening spots at month 5, 6, 7 to take on new times on the road, seminars and private clients and all the other shit that we do trying to fucking, pay the bills and put our kids through school. All right, cool. So I gray out that area, bang, other work comes through, ready to go, don't need to be there. And as we get to week 9, I see the strength coach sends the program. Hey, here's what I want to see, coaches. What do you want to see from the athlete? Strength coach sends the program. I see on Instagram, it's all fucking powerlifting. It's box squats, 2 inches above parallel box squats, just fucking doubles and triples. I'm like, what the fuck are you guys doing here? We still have about 8 pounds to pull off of this motherfucker during training camp just to get them to the point that we can actually cut. Not 8 pounds away from weight, 8 pounds away from the point that then we can have a fucking mildly horrific weight cut to get them there. But we worked with the athlete long enough that we knew how much we can squeeze out. Well, as that goes forward, that coach gets fucking pissy, cuts off all communication with me. The head coach calls me up and tells me, hey, your job is to worry about the weight cut. So why don't you just worry about the weight cut? I said, well, fuck, dude, 9 weeks out, I am worried about the weight cut. I was worried about the weight cut 29 weeks out, but nobody else here really is. The athlete certainly is not. The athlete calls me and says, hey, coach, don't worry about it, man. I'll make weight. Don't worry about it. I'm fine. I'll make weight. I'm fine. I said, bro, you're not fine. Looking at my team and I, looking at the diagnostics, looking at all the data that we had at hand, plus past experiences, all of our journals, we said, listen, if you don't make a dramatic change to your training, to your lifestyle, adding in fasted cardio in them, or like really pulling out all the fucking little tricks in our sleeve, right? Fucking playing with carbohydrate, nighttime carb, just playing all these different little fucking tricks that you shouldn't have to do. And as you guys, we shouldn't have to do all this shit this far out, but this is where we are. And this is what a lot of coaches do. That's what they think is normal. For us, that's fucking abnormal. We don't want to be in the red zone. So anyway, this is the way it's going to be. I said, if you don't implement this stuff immediately, and fucking immediately, so you're going to miss weight by 6 pounds. Flat out, end of story. Move forward. We go through, 2.5 more weeks, and the athlete doesn't make a change. Fucking training goes exactly the same. I'm on the East Coast. They're on the West. I'm on the West Coast. They're on the East Coast. I'm waking up at 5 a.m. my time, calling the athlete to be like, you up, motherfucker? Like, let's go. Because I was literally going for my own run at 5 a.m. I didn't have to. I'm a fucking married ass fucking middle-aged man, right? I don't need to be doing this shit anymore. Fucking done. I'm waking up to get this fucker up to be like, fuck, my coach is up right now. And what am I getting? I'm getting fucking put to voicemail, right? Put to voicemail. It's 8 o'clock where this motherfucker is, and he's still sleeping, right? So anyway, move forward. The athlete calls me at week 7 and says, fuck, coach, my weight isn't shifting. I need you to get out here. I said, I can. I'm booked. What do you mean you're booked? Like, you always come out. I said, bro, I got the fucking email of you telling me not to come out, which maybe came from you, maybe came from your agent, maybe because you didn't want to pay me what you have to pay me to fucking be there, which I don't want to be there anyway in the first place. By the way, keep your fucking money. Just eat when you're supposed to. Get up and go for a goddamn fucking run. You have a beautiful gym in your house. You don't even have to leave, right? You can do it in your underpants. He's like, well, I really need you to come out. Buddy, like, and this is the entitlement mentality. I need you to come out. The head coach calls, who told me not to worry about it, to worry about the weight cut. He calls, he says, hey, coach, what are you doing? Like, why can't you come out here? Like, because I have a business and a schedule and other clients and a career and a life. And I'm on record weeks ago telling you guys exactly this was going to happen. Fucking exactly this was going to happen. I'm not the smartest fucking guy, and I don't claim to know how to set up fucking arm bars and transition between fucking, strikes and shots and all that shit. Like, I'm not even trying to be that dude. I'm just trying to keep this motherfucker healthy so we can make weight, go out there and perform, run through his contracts and provide for his family. And God forbid fucking live another 50, 60, 70 years after his career happens without fucking looking the way that we know these athletes end up looking. That's all I fucking care about at this point. And he's like, well, you have to come out. So I cannot. I'm not coming out. What are you talking about? I have to come out. Trying to like boss me around. I'm get the fuck out of here, dude. So anyway, athlete texts me back and says, hey man, if you can't be here for me, then I'm going to have to move in another direction. I said, man, I'm here for you, but I can't be there for you. I looked at my schedule. I said, so I was literally flying East Coast, West Coast. I had a bunch of bullshit going on and cool shit, right? Fucking making money, baby. Fucking busy, right? Getting all shit done, hustling though. I got a wife who's pregnant, who's about to like give birth at that time. Also like high stresses, man. This motherfucker, because he can't avoid a pizza on a Sunday, but still just giving a little flavor, a little entertainment. We'll get back to the fun stuff here in a minute. So anyway, he says, well, I'm actually, don't think we should. He says, I don't think, through text message, by the way, like text, dude, fucking call me, man. Like, get the fuck out of here. Text message, by the way, like a little boy. I don't think we should work together for the rest of this fight. Like, I need someone to be here with me 24/7. I said, man, God bless. Best of luck. Like, literally, I wish you the best. Well, fast forward, fucker goes out there and misses weight by 6 pounds. Right? Misses weight by 6 pounds. And dare I say, blamed me for fucking not being there. Blamed me. I never really told this story before, and the motherfucker came out and talked shit, but who gives a fuck? I don't care. I just kept it moving. At the same time, the point is the data is the data, man. You can't out tough the fucking data, right? You can't go out there and party on the fucking weekends and eat your pizza and sleep in on your fucking runs and only train when you want to train, when it's convenient to train, when you watch fucking Rocky 4 or whatever the fuck it is and feel like you're a world beater. But then when it's fucking cold and wet and rainy and your girl's fucking laying next to you telling you to stay in bed, like, motherfucker, you got to get out of bed. You got to go fucking put the work in, right? I forget who said this, and it just popped up in my feed. I think Zach Evanesh posted a motivational fucking quote recently. It was basically about these entitled athletes not doing what is necessary to become a champion. And the coach basically said, it doesn't matter what they want to do, it's what they have to do. There's no changing what needs to be done in order to be at your best in the fucking win. And that was the whole point of it. So to share a little personal anecdote of how the 8 different coaches and egos, 1 out of the 8 coaches actually chimed in and said, I don't think what he bench presses is going to matter in this fight anyway. Like, kind of agreeing with me, but that was like his way to agree with me. I was like, hey, at least I got fucking 1 out of 8, right? So I think that's better than most of the time. Take that for what it is. So, all right. So now moving on from that, and I think I'd love to, after offline, we'll kind of guess on who that was specifically. We won't put it publicly because we're not those type of guys, right? All right. But now we spoke about, I want to touch briefly on the periodization here, right? So we talked about periodization. All right, periodization for the MMA athlete, but also we've got 80 some odd thousand listeners on the audio podcast. Hopefully our fledgling YouTube channel will slowly start to grow. So in essence, there could be 100,000 different humans who actually hear us, see us, and kind of like get engaged with this content. Of that 100,000, let's say, I don't know, maybe 100 are MMA fighters. Maybe, I don't know what the percentage are, right? Maybe, right? Most of them are like, I ain't fucking doing that. But everyone would kind of want to look like an MMA fighter. So to ask you guys, what's the difference in periodizing between your UFC clients, but also the average person? I want to give the average person a little bit of takeaway here. Like, I'm not getting in the fucking octagon, but I want to look like I can. I want to be able to kind of jump and run and grapple and climb and crawl and bound and skip and do all the things I call athletic expression. I want to be able to do all that. I want to get on the mat with the college kids and fucking, do 25, 35 minute fucking live goes a couple times a week. I want to be able to do that. I'm not trying to fucking, win, but I'm trying to get out there and compete. So for you guys, kind of a round robin, give me a breakdown of split. Now, when I say I'm just strength and conditioning minded, take the skills training out of it. From an MMA trained athlete to the person at home right now, let's talk to them who wants to kind of look like that MMA athlete. How would that type of program look for you guys? Let's go Andy first.
I'm going to punt and let these gentlemen speak first. This is what they do.
Okay.
All right,
All
I'll go first.
right, go Phil. Phil's in.
So mainly my main skeleton approach would be something of a concurrent conjugated style, where I would be working multiple modalities of training throughout that particular week or month or whatever. I just make sure that if I put it in an analogy, if you look at it like a stereo, I'm going to turn up all knobs, but I'm going to make sure that I turn up one over the other based upon our focus points, right? So with the MMA athlete, I may be actually working on more from a power perspective, more speed, more power, and still working some strength training, but that's not going to be our prime focus. When it comes down to a general, like I say, let's say general pop client, I'm just going to look at what they actually need first and foremost from an assessment standpoint. And then when they're trying to get in shape, when they're trying to look a certain way, but also have that athletic ability, we still can work some hypertrophy, we still can work some power, and we can still get them stronger. We just got to make sure that we measure out accordingly. And then also, I'm not too big of a fan of like a block style periodization model or anything like that. I do appreciate what the general concepts are. But from my overall experience, I found that having that more concurrent conjugated approach or something like a vertical integration can transfer over a little bit more and keep the athlete and the person progressing steadily throughout the year. So that's primarily where I would take it.
Awesome. And that's actually right after this, I do want to talk about the different styles of periodization. So that's actually a great segue into that. But Joe, to you. So average person they're not fighting in the UFC, but they want to kind of get out there and look the same, feel the same, and have the same relative athletic expression to their own ability as an MMA athlete.
Yeah, I'm me and Phil, I think, have a similar training style, because I'm big conjugate periodization fan as well, just because I feel it's so much more practical for athletes and even average Joes. I don't think, having those blocks of, it just, things don't go perfectly where you have this perfect hypertrophy block, then you go into strength for a couple of weeks, then power. Like, I like training multiple abilities at once. And again, like Phil said, not that they all have to be trained at the same intensity. I'll emphasize one or two of those abilities, but I think for athletes and for the average Joe who wants to just look better, but also function and be more athletic, having a conjugate style periodization and combining some max effort work, some heavier lifts just for force production and overall strength, but also incorporating the dynamic effort method. And it doesn't have to be traditional West Side where it's dynamic effort, squats and deadlifts. You could do some simple box jumps. Maybe you do some hill sprints. You push a prowler. It could be lower level depending on where you're at, but combining dynamic effort, max effort, and then also some accessory repeated effort stuff, some hypertrophy, the combination of that, I think, produces the best results. Again, not only for athletes, but for average Joes looking to become more athletic and still look the part. Because most programs are either it's powerlifting type programs or bodybuilding type. Most people are just training one thing. It's like a strength or a bodybuilding program they got out of, Muscle and Fitness magazine. So that conjugate approach where you're training multiple different qualities seems to produce, or I found produce, the best results.
Awesome. What do you got, Andy?
So I use a system similar to the way I break down the fight camps, which is put everything in a box and you got 10 points, right? So what are all the physical attributes you're looking to work on? And if someone says, I don't know, I just want to be generally healthier, stronger, kind of all of these things, then I'd say, to me, it comes down to everyone should be able to express some speed and power. You should have some maximal strength. You should do something that challenges the muscle to produce maximal force repeatedly. And this is what we generally call kind of hypertrophy. So it's not truly maximal because you have some repetitions in there. You should be able to do something in, we'll just call it the high intensity interval range. So this is a lot of work over, say, a 10 to 90 second domain with some sort of break, and do it again a bunch of times, right? And then I believe that you should be able to do something that is sustained continuous effort for at least 30 minutes. All right, so these are general categories I put. And now I'll say, all right, do you have equal desire for kind of just health and body management and some strength? And then I would say, break those things up and you can combine them. So you could easily do some speed, some strength, vertical integration approach, right? You could stack them all in a column, do multiple things in a day. You could do a block system, right? You could do a linear periodization approach. Say you want to do nothing but strength for 6 weeks. I'm not against that as long as you understand your timeline and what you're getting. So if you tell me right now, I understand all those adaptations you talked about, Andy, but right now I really want to just add as much muscle as possible. Well, then I'm not worried if you don't want to do some speed work and don't want to do a bunch of long distance steady state conditioning. Let's just go straight for hypertrophy for 6 weeks. That's the most specific way to get the most adaptations in that vein, right? If you want some combination, well, I want to lose a little bit of fat and I want to get a little bit faster, but I really want to just get stronger. Okay, turn the knobs higher in the strength, like Phil just talked about. Perfect analogy. And so it comes down to asking, what's the priority? Why? What do you want to get after? And so these are what I call defenders. So you have to identify the goal, whether you know it or not. And a lot of times for the Gen Pop, they know it, right? They can just tell you, I want to get stronger or faster. You don't have to run an assessment like you would with an athlete who may not understand what they need, right? They want to get better at fighting. They don't realize they need to get faster or whatever. Right? They don't understand what that is. But if the Gen Pop knows the goal, then you just step back and say, okay, what's the defender? What's stopping you from achieving that goal? And now we prioritize the training. And if really it's 8 out of 10 on our bucket for speed, then we're really going to do is I might do 6 straight weeks of speed. And I don't care because we've got 6 months, right? So what's the priority and what's the timeline? That's what we're always looking at. And if we don't have a specific date or timeline, then I'm fully supporting what these two guys say and say, let's do either some sort of conjugate combination, a vertical integration, something like this where we train multiple modalities at once. I'm not going to advise linear periodization where we sort of focus on one thing or block at a time. So going back to my original answer with all those things, if the average person just sort of says, I want a little bit of all of this, then I would say those are the things you need to get to. And if you want to break those up into 2 workouts per week or 5 workouts per week, the more you train, the more adaptations you get. So that's what it's come down to. So what fits with your lifestyle, what's practical, what's achievable for you, then break it up that way. So if you're like, hey, I can train 6 days a week, but I really don't have more than 30 minutes. Okay, we're going to use a different approach. And we may do something like Monday speed, Tuesday strength, Wednesday conditioning, whatever, right? Because we just don't have time. Or if you're like, I can get 3 workouts in a week, they could be an hour and a half, but there's no way I can do it more than 3 times a week. Then we may do a little bit of speed, a little bit of strength, a lot of hypertrophy and or whatever. You can see we can break it up and use different periodization approaches with that person. So timeline, goal, and defender. That's what I'm looking at.
Very academic of you, sir.
I like lists, numbers, things that are easy for students to figure out.
To that point, actually, now let's talk a little bit broader about periodization. So for those listening right now, is there a specific type of periodization that suits their ranking in the hierarchy of training experience? So we have the rank level novice. So we go novice, beginner. I do differentiate entry level, intermediate to exit level, intermediate. Then we have the advanced level working through the way up to the elite level, right? The elite would be like the Olympian, let's say. The advanced level would be the D1 athlete. I have my exit level. Our system here, we say, kind of the exit level intermediate would be the high level, high school, state champion level athlete. And I say that because we have 90+% male dominated audience that pays attention to us over here. So that's good for the guys out there to really pay attention to. But with that general, and then novices, man, 13-year-old kid never fucking touched the weight before, or a 60-year-old lady who's never touched the weight before, right? Either way, and that certainly fits. I don't care. Male, female, age really doesn't matter. It's what is your experience, your training experience. We look towards dysfunction. We run through evals and we kind of, pay attention to the body. But with that being said, back to periodization and programming, does one specific style fit where the individual is? And is there a hierarchy maybe of the periodization? Like in order to get the conjugate, like you got to go through a few years of linear. Like you have to take the time and run through, 3-4 week blocks where you're starting higher volume, slowly building your way down to heavier loads, 3 RMs, and then working back up to your 12 rep sets, multiple tiers, assistance exercises. Do you have to build up that base, or can you just walk right in the West Side barbell and fucking, you know, hit a PR every single workout. Joe, let's jump in with you first this time.
Yeah, I think, you know, I would say a more of a linear approach for newbies to just like, when I first started training, it was basic progressive overload. I know, like, my dad would have me do 3 sets of 10 of, you know, a couple basic lifts. And on the last set, if I could get more than 10 reps, you went up 5 pounds the next week. And you know, you could do that for years. You know, it could get boring, but like, you will make progress. We know newbies make progress pretty much doing anything. I still look at periodization. I know we have the different, you know, you could talk linear, conjugate, different block periodization styles. To me, still, periodization is just having a plan. So I think everyone, beginner, intermediate, advanced, everyone should have some kind of a plan going into the gym. So I think as a beginner, it doesn't need to be super complicated, some basic movements. But I think before you even start thinking periodization and progression, and this is coming from a meathead who loves lifting weights, I don't think, because when you mentioned it before, it kind of triggered in my brain. If there's 100,000 people listening and maybe 100 of them are high level athletes, the majority are just average people out there. It's so important to know that your quality of movement is still priority number one. Before you start talking periodization models and progression, like, you better be able to do a body weight squat before you put a barbell on your back and start barbell squatting. Like, if you can't bend over and tie your shoes without being in pain, you shouldn't be bending over and ripping a barbell off the floor. You know, how many people have you seen that could do a perfect push-up? Like, there ain't many people who could do a perfect push-up, yet how many guys are at the gym trying to bench 315, you know, every Monday night? So before we even talk about periodization, I think movement quality and getting that taken care of first, you know, because one of the worst things you could do, and why so many guys our age have shoulder issues and low back issues, everyone just wants to load more weight on the bar. And that's a recipe for disaster. When you start loading a dysfunctional movement pattern, that's when you're gonna have issues. Like, building strength on top of dysfunction is a recipe for disaster. So I would encourage everyone to, I know it's not the sexy answer, not the meathead answer, but really try to master squatting, hinging, you know, push-ups, chin-ups, like, master the basics, master your body weight, then slowly start overloading them before you start thinking about any kind of periodization models.
Sure. Phil?
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback off that, because at the end of the day, again, we're talking about periodization. We're just talking about an annual plan or a plan to get to a certain goal. When you're talking about beginner, intermediate, advanced, I'm thinking of like general to specific. So those elite level athletes, I'm going to be working more specificity of that sport. And that could be from a physiological standpoint. It could be from a biomotor standpoint. It doesn't have to obviously mimic the fight, but we want to give them the specific movement patterns that are going to correlate over to that fight. When I'm talking about like a beginner, yes, you can run that linear progression and still make gains. And I've seen young kids, I work with youth athletes also. And what I'm actually really trying to accomplish there is, one, teach them how to move, like Joe said, give them proper gait mechanics and teach them how to squat and teach them how to lunge and hinge, and show them reciprocation, show them rotational components that are going to enhance the quality of just as a human would be to move in a specific manner to their sport, whether they play baseball or whether they play football or whatever. When you have it's funny to me, because I see a lot of people that are older, maybe older population, you could tell that they have never done any general movement quality training, haven't had any type of mobility or stability built in. And if, like Joe again said, loading a dysfunctional pattern, not having the proper joint prerequisites before you go to load that particular movement is a recipe for disaster. So I like to look at it like, okay, I'm going to gain the proper range of motion. Then I'm going to have stability in those end ranges. And then I can build upon that from a strength perspective. Once they have the strength and the overall force built in and they can absorb and redirect that force, then we can start to work on more speed and more power production with that force that was built. I have an individual by the name of Stefi Cohen. You guys probably know who Stefi is, right? She's the strongest female in the world, pound for pound. Now she's trying to box, right? She's a boxer, well, turning into a boxer. And I don't need to work strength training with Stefi Cohen. Like, she could probably tell me how to deadlift, right? So at the end of the day, my goal is to make her a better athlete. So I'm looking at it, okay, now I'm not looking at it from a periodization standpoint. I'm looking at it from what type of mechanics, what type of modalities, and what type of methods am I going to utilize to enhance the quality of that athlete for that particular sport? Because now, if you want to put it in a level, she's elite. She's elite in what she did before, but she's an elite athlete in general. So again, I want to work more specificity of that particular sport so that she can take what she's gained from powerlifting and enhance those qualities as an athletic, being as she is.
Awesome. Nice. And I know, Andy, I know you've worked with Stefi also throughout her career. So, great segue to jump in with your own style.
Yeah, I think Stefi is a perfect example. So if you don't know her, I think the lowest we got her to was 119 pounds. And I think she's deadlifted 585. So she's starting to get in the neighborhood of 5X body weight, 25 or so world records, and a whole host of things. And she is a great example of exactly what Phil mentioned, in that she did not start with powerlifting. And, I won't mention her age, but now she's starting at boxing at this time. But she came from soccer. Right, she came from a general training background, and one of the reasons why she got so good is she actually started in Olympic weightlifting as well as powerlifting, and now she's doing boxing. So this echoes both what both these gentlemen mentioned, which is academically we're generally going to say there is a progression from general to specific, and this is true both as you get closer to competition, say within one season or one off season or mesocycle, but also throughout the training career. So we would argue, and I would certainly emphasize, that early in one's development, it doesn't matter if you're, age-wise early or just simply, lifting for the first time, even though you're a 25-year-old professional fighter, right? We'd still call, Mike, you mentioned that's, you're a novice in that area, your physical training is low. You should start with more general concepts, principles, movement patterns, right? Squat, jump, throw, move on to other stuff, loaded to fatigue, right? And I actually want to make this comment about Joe is one of the reasons I think that he has had such lasting power, and he's put, how many people in the world have put, more than a few people from high school to professional, Joe Defranco, Lauren Landau. Okay, the list is basically over, right? You don't have any of these people. And the only way I think you can do that is you've modified. I know for sure when you started 45 years ago, it wasn't a movement-based system. And now you're seeing many, many coaches move to that and say, look, we have to have movement competency first. And it doesn't matter if you're trying to peak a kid at age 15, you should be fired. Like strength conditioning wise, right? Like this is all. So if you walk around, Joe Ken, I could name you a list of people, Zach Avanesh, they're going to say the same thing, right? It is movement based stuff. And so I'm really glad to hear that now, because when I started my career, it wasn't that way. And I know when Joe started, it wasn't even close to that. So I wanted you at home to know that, like, that's just not like these crazy guys. This is the standard of the field now is movement-based competency. And Stefi is a perfect example of that working, right? And so now she can do whatever she wants to do because she has that incredible background. So as we get closer, and the rationale behind all that is specificity wins with adaptation, right? So the fastest way for you to get better at squatting, at the maximum weight you can squat, is to squat at maximum amount of weight as you can, right? Specificity wins. But that train can only run so long because specificity also leads to overuse. And in a short time frame, that's not a big deal. That's how you create adaptation. But as we progress through what we call long-term athletic development, now you run into overuse injury. And I kind of stole that LTA thing, but you want to pay attention to, again, a professional baseball player, if all you're doing is throwing a baseball as hard as you can at age 15 to 19, you will probably develop a very good fastball by the time you're 19, but you will not be playing when you're 25. It's very, very unlikely. And so it's not that you can't throw fast when you're 15, but you want to make sure you are developing this general base as you are sometimes throwing fast, right, moving forward. So all those things are the academic side of what these gentlemen have lived and seen and gone through. And this is why we'll all argue and bitch so much about multi-sport athletes when you're kids and not specifying too early, unless you want to be a gymnast who only specify, and they always fight me on this. Like, well, if you want to be a high-level gymnast, you have to specify. Yeah, sure, but you're also going to retire at 18. So it's just not an equivocal model, right? You're in the Olympics at 15, 16, 17, then you're outie, 5,000, right? Like, so we're trying to develop people who are either athletes in that 7 to 10 year range that we typically have to physically peak, or at minimum, you're not just a train wreck of physical injuries by the time you finish high school or college athletics, and so you're still around. Either case, it's the same thing, is we want longevity of there. So I'll finish with actually something you mentioned, Helen, Mike, at the very beginning, and she actually just landed in Nice, France, doing her first big tournament in a while as we get her prepared for her next shot at the Olympics. And she did a little Q&A on the airplane today, and somebody asked her this. The question was, what's the first thing that came to your mind when you won the Olympic gold? And I knew this already, but she literally just posted this today, so you can go verify I didn't make this up. But she said, there is no secret power. I can't believe normal people win the Olympics. And what made me think about that is how you started this conversation and say, hey, there might be 100 athletes listening to this, but the rest of you people are normal.
Yep.
Yeah, you're normal, but there's no secret power. I can't believe normal people win the Olympics.
From an Olympic gold medalist, which is a female wrestling gold medalist, by the way, which is not uncommon, but a rarity for sure. That's awesome. We use the term everyday athlete over here, where I don't care who you are. You don't have to enter a competition to think and act and live and train like an athlete. And that's really what we try and hammer into our community, into our clientele, and to anyone who hears us and watches our content. We're all athletes. Man, if you're a father, if you're a mother, if you got kids running around, you're working that cubicle job, you're still an athlete. You got to think like an athlete, live like an athlete. Kind of, I say, explode out of your chair. Don't kind of like, explode out of your chair. Proper form, proper posture. Think about your gait when you're walking down the hallway. Take proper steps getting to your car. Think about, locomotion as you're moving your body across this planet. Be aware of that, kind of take the long way every way you have to go. Now with that, I have two questions. Both are actually enjoyable, no trick questions here, but the whole concept of what I'm trying to do here, this battle tested series, and you fucking amazing dudes hopping on, as I'm really trying to lift up individuals I respect. I'm trying to shine, just whatever little light I have over here on people I deeply respect. I want to see more of you. I want to get as many of my audience members and community to start like listening to you guys, following your stuff, trying your programs or your products, or going to your seminars and doing all that stuff. It's really the expansion of knowledge. One of us is nothing. Like it's really all of us. And I think we're all like-minded individuals. We have the ability, or I certainly do here now, is to share the stories, the principles, the dignity, the integrity of like-minded people that I actually really respect. But with that, I want you to take a moment and tell everyone, like, who was maybe your mentor, your inspiration? What are some great names that you look up to or you relied on or were pivotal? And it doesn't have to be a whole long, diatribe about how amazing one person is. Just shout some names out there also, so the people here understand, like, wow, like there's fucking like 10 great names. And I know one name that's going to pop up for everybody, actually two I can think of right now that I got my little note here. So I'll tell you whether or not I was correct, that are formative to me also. So maybe we'll just go over. So the way I see it, I'll go Joe, Phil, and then Andy kind of around my little horn in front of me. Just what are some names of some people that were pivotal, inspired you, or thought they were fucking smart, badass, whatever it was. So Joe, Phil, then Andy.
Well, my big one is, I got to say, my dad. He'll say he wasn't not the smartest guy in the world, but I always appreciate the fact that he was both my parents, really, my dad's just the more vocal one, but they were always very they instilled in my brain from a very early age. We don't care what you do, just do what you love and be the best at it. And, you know, when I went to open up a storage closet gym and business with no business background, and literally every other person in my life was like, what are you doing? Like, you need to get a real job. Like, that's not going to be a sustainable living, training some high school kids out of a storage closet. Like, it's time to get a real job.
You put it that way.
Here we 40 years later, but you know, in all seriousness, both my parents supported. They didn't have, you know, financial support, but they were always like, if you love it, you'll work harder and longer at it, and you could do anything and really make a career doing anything if you're that passionate about it. And here we are, 25 years later, you know, still making a living with this non-job.
That's awesome, brother. That's awesome, man. Having a dad there behind you is huge. You mentioned him previously. That was your intro to weight training. Actually, was dad teaching you progressive overload, putting you on the bench, and kind of slowly building you and scaling you to sort of see how formative he was to you. That's awesome.
Yeah, he was. That was the original garage gym guy too. He was a New Jersey state trooper, but he had a warehouse gym for all the police, fire, military in Paterson, New Jersey. Turnkey gym, open 24 hours in like a really bad section of Paterson, New Jersey. But that was my beginning obsession with like the warehouse garage style gym. And that's what I kind of ultimately mimicked throughout my career. The last of a dying breed, like actual real gyms, Rocky Balboa, you know, style.
That's all. It's so on that note right here, where I grew up, where I made my bones, was the Jersey Shore Fitness Shop, where it was opened by two lifeguards for the police primarily. And it was right kind of in a bad section of town, right on the train tracks, on the edge of a very crime-ridden Asbury Park. A lot of people know Asbury Park, New Jersey, where Asbury was bad. That's where the race riots were in the 60s. They set the city on fire. But you walk into that gym, it was like walking in the church, neutral territory, good and evil. You would have the cops and the firemen and the fucking criminals, so gangbangers, side by side, training, spotting each other. And that's where I walked in as a 12-year-old kid, lying about my age in order to sign the waiver. And just like, man, it was fun. And I didn't know, like, you don't know crime. You just see these fucking strong dudes. The only thing that matters was work.
Yep.
If you're fucking nicest guy, it doesn't matter who you are. You put in the fucking work. You move the weights relative to you, right? So I remember being fucking a skinny little fucking nothing. First time I benched the big wheels, the 45s on each side, the whole fucking gym. Fucking, like, I didn't know that they stopped. They stopped and they actually clapped for me because I had been there for 2 fucking years, banging away, this tiny little fucking peckerhead trying to fucking make his way and fucking, get stronger. And that was like the big deal. So anyway, to kind of tag on your story, but very much like fucking sweaty brick walls, like no heat, fucking messy, right? Spit and other fluids on the fucking floor. It was, rust everywhere. It was one of those. I don't know if you have those over on the West Coast. I know everything's fucking,
That's the
shiny.
East Coast thing right there.
Yeah, for sure. All right, sorry. Phil, so you, man, who's pivotal, inspirational, in your career, in your life?
I'll give you two. So both females, I guess the most important females in my life would be my mother, for one. I remember the first time I think this is probably why I became a coach. I started working with her at the age of like 6 years old when she was running up stadium stairs and pulling hoses because she was trying to be a firefighter, one of the first female firefighters in our area. So I remember actually, going in through the training and everything else. And she's always been there and told me, that I could do anything that I put myself in place to do. And that's what I feel like. For me, anything is possible. And I think from that confidence that she's given me, I was able to do and still able to do the things that I'm doing today. And then the other one is my wife. At the end of the day, if I didn't have this young lady, she took me from being a boy to honestly now being a real man and understanding how to be a leader, taking initiative. So I honestly would say between those two ladies, this is the man you got today.
Right on. Awesome. What do you got, Andy?
I'm gonna take it in a little bit different direction. Well, I will say on the personal note, and I'll keep this short because I can't get through it emotionally. You know, my mom and dad and my paternal grandfather are very high on those lists for similar reasons these guys mentioned. And I know all your background's a little bit enough to know that just like me, things are pretty awesome now, but they weren't always that way. You know, and some people many people way worse than me. But I think a lot of that shapes, you know, what all of us have done in our life. So those folks I wouldn't be here, but there's other people who actually I think have inspired me in this field that people don't necessarily know of at all. And a lot of times they don't have social media. And so there's just names coming to my head. And I want to see if some of these names were on your list, Mike, and probably not. But one was Bill Gillespie. And he let me come up and hang out with him at the University of Washington a couple of times. And dude he's still breaking world records in bench press. He's fantastic. I mentioned Lauren Landau. Lauren speaks around the world 1,000 times. He's now the strength conditioning coach for the Denver Broncos. But I've been watching him speak for 15 years. Joe Ken, same thing. I knew Joe in 2004 or 5, and it was a bit rough around the edges, both personally and I thought his approach, you know. But then just to watch his career and then the way that he presents so humbly and is always changing his stuff based on things and basically flat out admitting I was wrong about this. And for a guy of his stature and NFL strength coach of the year, Division I strength coach of the year, he doesn't have to do any of those things, but he's so quick to be like, yeah, that was a bad idea and whatever. And we just don't see that a lot in our fields. So I really admire him for that. Stefi is another one that I go to all the time for what she's accomplished, but also being a physical therapist, coming to a new country, other personal issues she's had to deal with. And I'm like, man, she's just a fucking bull. You know, she just bears down and gets through it. And it's always positive and just doesn't let that shit shine through with a bunch of things. So she's out there, her stuff I've learned from. In fact, I mean, not to be weird about it, Joe, but like, you know, he's another guy that comes up on the list. I mean, I bought products from both these guys. I mean, knowing damn well I probably could have hit him up, hey, yo, yeah, but like it's not worth it to me. Like I want to buy their stuff and not even tell them about it. They don't probably even know that. Just because I'm like, that was good shit. I wanted that. So I mean, especially Phil. I've put Phil over about 1 billion times in the last 2 years because I'm like, every fucking time I see this guy put something up, I'm like, Jesus, how does he keep getting better? He's just doing such good shit. So those are a bunch of names that have come up on my list. And I know when we end the show and I'm in the shower tonight, I'm going to come up with like 60 other names. I'm like, oh, fuck, how did I forget this guy? And how did I forget this girl? But those are some of the ones that jumped out immediately. And as you guys keep talking, maybe I'll come up with other names and I'll just cut you off and interrupt.
Awesome. And there's so many.
I'll add on to that because I think Joe deserves a huge amount of praise because everything that I've kind of started with was based off of what he's laid out. So, Joe, again, hats off to you, my friend. You're the man. We all know that.
I appreciate that, guys. Thank you. Means a lot.
Yeah, and that's one of the like that Godfather of the garage gym. But that's very true, and it's certainly a sign of respect in our industry. That, you know, everybody knows the name Defranco, right? Everybody's aware of it. And it's not because you're a good marker, which you are. It's not because you're a good-looking guy, which you are. It's not because you're from New Jersey, even. Which I mean, that's important. It's because it's the body of your work. And we teach our coaches. It's about results. Number one is research. So this is a hierarchy that we have. Research. You got to know your fucking topic inside and out. That's step one. I don't give a fuck about anything else. Research. Number two is results. Can you produce results, replicatable results on time, every time? Yes or no? I don't want the cardiologist that has 100 good surgeries and one fuck up, right? Do you produce results? And then from results comes reputation. Reputation is simply your results plus your character as a man, as a woman, as a human. That's your fucking integrity, right? That's where most fail. And from there, I'll finish this: research, results, reputation, resume. Because once you have the first three, well, then you can start working with the bigger name athletes, the athletes who are going to fucking vet you out, who expect you to be on time every time, produce results on time every time. No fucking excuses, motherfucker. And I speak like this on purpose. This is the game. This is the way it fucking goes. NFL style, cutthroat. You're fucking fired, dude. We can have dinner. That's fine. You're a nice dude, but you're fucking out. You dropped the ball. This is a fucking business, right? This is a multi-million dollar, billion dollar, trillion dollar aggregated all topics together. We can look at it like that, right? And then the finality of this little system that we have here is rewards. Once you get through the first 4 tiers, the first 3 being most important, then the rewards come at the very end. But if you start here at the rewards, and we know a lot of fuckheads out there who do start with the rewards level, they want the Instagram, they want the selfies, they want to fucking charge the money, but these motherfuckers don't know what they're talking about. They do not produce results, and they're a piece of shit, right? They're a fucking dirtbag. I would not trust my wife or my wallet near these assholes, right? Gone. Like that's the nature of the business. And I dare anybody to try and show me a better kind of wheel of being successful. But if you put your head down and really apply yourself in those areas, starting with research, and you guys here, I think you epitomize that. It's the never-ending pursuit of knowledge. It's constantly walking into the gym with your fucking filthy ass, raggedy old white belt on. That type of mentality. We never know enough. Fuck, every single day I feel like I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. I swear to God, there's always something new to learn. Like, what's Galpin talking about now? This 5-minute fucking physio. Like, I need the 5-hour physio. Andy, like, fuck, I need more. Like, Phil, like, what the fuck is he even talking about right now? Let me get my fucking syllabus out and understand it. Fucking Defranco, what he's doing up there. Holy shit, fucking Joe's like changing the fucking game again. Like, that's the attitude. Now, I and you guys, I know we jump into this. We jump out of bed. We're just fucking little boys here. This is what we were doing, when we were kids, when we were hitting puberty. This is what this stuff in my mind anyway. I don't want to, project too much. We do this shit because we're born into it. We love it. It gets us out of bed. Like, we would do this stuff for free, and we were doing it for free. And somehow we found a way to fucking turn $1 doing it. Like, holy shit, are you kidding me right now? Like, I can actually fucking, put food on my table by doing what I love. And I think for me personally, what I love is walking that journey with people. I love changing people's lives. I love being a tiny little part in someone's life. And it's so selfish. I forget who the philosopher was who basically said this, is that everything we do is selfish. I make you feel good. It makes me feel good. I'm a selfish motherfucker. So I know that to be true about myself. It makes me feel good when I see people do well, live well. And then at the end of the day, maybe it even fucking monetizes for me. Holy cow. Well, that's double win, right? Then my wife lets me out of the house a little bit more often because, she didn't have to worry about, buying the good bread or whatever the hell that might be, So, all right, off of that little rant. And, I think there's a whole nother concept that we'll talk about later on, because everyone has a different business model. We do a lot of financial talk, small business talk. We work with a lot of coaches here also. And everyone has a different career path. So, a couple weeks from now, if you guys have the time, hopefully this whole group, I know we asked Nick to be a part. He couldn't be a part of this one. Maybe he comes on, maybe just 1 or 2 of you or whatever. But I'd love you guys to come back on and talk a little bit more about the business side. And there's a lot of interest. There's a lot of young coaches that they want to go through the Galpin path. Like, I spoke with Dr. Corey Peacock a while back, and we spoke a little bit deeper. What are the opportunities? If you go the academic realm, to which I did not, if you go the academic realm, well, what does that path look like? And where does that ROI really start to kick in? And if so, or where so, what does that actually look at? And, Corey was talking about some students, they actually make a couple wrong turns along the way. I mean, all education is great, but, getting the right education for the path, or guys like Phil or Joe, and, kind of where you went, how you've grown the business. And I know the marketing side matters. It's social media. There's a lot of stuff going on here that's interesting. We know from the feedback, we get, just tons of emails of coaches who are like trying to figure out their own way. They want to learn. Like, so that's another conversation maybe we have. But the last thing I did want to speak with you guys about, and I know I am conscious of time right now, so we'll kind of make it pretty quick. I've done this with Joe and Andy before. And it's funny, when you guys were on my show a few years back individually, your answer was almost the same. And let's see if it changes. Phil, I don't think we did this when you were on the show, but give me your top 5 exercises. So for the little skinny bastard right now, or the lady at home who just wants to fucking turn heads when she walks down, down the street, or, the person who's trying to rebuild their body after taking 10 years off out of school, they got married and holy shit, what happened to me? The people trying to put it back together. But also I theorize that these are going to be very similar to the elite athletes anyway. So give me 5 exercises that every person should be performing 80% of the time. Or maybe I'm wrong. So I don't want to tell you. So you tell me. Give me 5 exercises people listening right now can go, yeah. And if you guys all agree, awesome. It doesn't have to be something different. You can certainly co-sign. So let's now go reverse. We'll go Andy, Phil, then Joe.
All right. Actually, a couple names popped in my head, so I'm going to jump there first, and I'll answer your question. Brandon Harris is a guy that I've worked with in Phoenix a lot that probably no one's heard of, just doing excellent stuff. Jimmy Radcliffe, I know Joe probably knows that name. Just elite for speed and movement stuff. The guys at Altus, everything they're doing there for true top end velocity. So those were just other names. And again, I know I'm forgetting a ton. I'm sorry to all of you. But anyways, top 5 exercises. It's basically, I don't even remember what I said the first time, Mike. It's probably a totally different list. I'm sorry.
I hope so.
Any major hinging, whatever you want to call that, deadlift or RDL or variation of a hinge is cool. Any type of squat would be the opposite, goblet squat, front squat. I don't really care. You can make arguments for all of those. Typically some sort of pressing movement. So horizontal press, vertical press. Again, I don't really care. So you're 3 in there. Then I would always add some sort of movement. So this would be a non-structured movement. So this could be a throw, a kick, a twist, a jump, a turn, like something where you're actually moving in a different unplanned plane would be number 4. And then number 5, forearm curls. Just seeing if you're listening out there. But that's it. I'm not changing it. I'm only giving them 4. I didn't want to take all the good ones. And now the real coaches can tell you the right answers.
Phil, that's you. The next one. Oh, gotcha. Your mic's off, buddy.
All right. So this one's tough because I'm always kind of switching things up a bit, and I'm always trying to progress and learn more. And probably maybe a year ago, I probably would have said something totally different here. But the first one I'm going to go with is actually running, right? And that could be any type of gait. And we're talking about, running in the sake of understanding reciprocation, understanding true locomotion. I like jumping, right? And with a lot of my athletes, I want them to be able to, levitate and get away from gravity, right? Be able to land efficiently, right? And then again, like Andy said, some type of press movement. Don't really care too much what type of press it is. You can even, regulate it down to even just a push-up. But I want to get some type of press movement for the anterior chain. I want to work the posterior chain through a row particular movement. And I'm kind of stuck between either a full squat, depending on the individual, or a lunge. And again, it really just depends. If you have those asymmetries there, I want to make sure that we're getting it all taken care of. So I guess I would say, let me just boil it down. It would be running, jumping, squatting, pressing, and a row variation.
Awesome.
Yeah, excuse me. I'm with them. I think the exercise itself, I know I'll give you my favorites, but it really does. It's more about the movement patterns and getting those foundational patterns in your program, an upper body push, an upper body pull, a squat, a hinge, and some kind of a lunge type variation. So my personal favorites for the push, I think more people should spend time with push-up variations. I'm a big bench press meathead guy, but all that, pinning the shoulders back and down ends up causing shoulder issues, so having your scaps moving freely, and you could still get jacked and load up push-ups with chains and get crazy. So any push-up variation you want. I was going to say row, but to give some little something different that everyone could do, laying on the ground and ISO hold YWT. I think there's not a person in this world that can't use that with all the texting and looking at their phones and computers. So that would be kind of my upper back pull, although it's a little twist on that, an isometric. And then for squat, I think more people should incorporate more unilateral work. So I'll say a Bulgarian split squat. Still love RDLs from my hinge. I think that's a classic, staple. And then my fifth would be a tie, either a sled push or drag, or I love loaded carries. So grab something and walk with it. Dumbbells, a sandbag, a kid, whatever, some kind of a loaded carry or sled drag would be my tied for fifth exercise.
Awesome. I'll drop mine in there. I have overhead press with variable resistance, single arm, double arm, barbell, kettlebell, sandbag. Awesome. Like bamboo bar. Awesome. Like bounding, kind of like to tag on also. Like, man, I'm a big fan of bounding, specifically lately for me. And like you said, Phil, it's like you go back 6 months, a year ago, different. But right now, and I see it like through our clientele here, man, fucking bounding is huge for us. Overhead presses, RDLs, again, variable resistance, of course, variable depth, of course. Just because I used to be I'm big on deadlift, but I think the RDLs from a teaching perspective, it's a lot easier to control form and to curate tension, locality of tension with the RDL, and really to teach people how to work certain areas. And for those listening, I think really take your time, start slow, enjoy that. But again, I am also a fan of pulling off the floor once we get mechanics down. Walking lunges, which kind of blends those fireman's carries, like I call them suitcase lunges, and like that took out squats for me. I was very much, barbell back squat for years and years. Then it was like, hey, you know what? Like I'm really down with these like weighted vest kind of goblets. But now, and like almost like you, Joe, looking towards like the unilateral, like the Bulgarian and split squats, I really like the walking lunges lately. It just does so much to move our body, to Andy's point, across, multiple planes, I think matters. And then just the traditional chin up, whether underhand, overhand, neutral grip, which also does very well work the forearm. And we program chins in most of the time as forearm work, even if it's just dead hangs, right? Kind of contracting scapula, teaching and cueing form really before anything else. And that's part of what we do here in our novice training protocol. We actually, I don't want to say mandate, but what we strive for is 100 bodyweight squats, 100 push-ups. We strive for 20 dead hang chin-ups with, individual grip, prefer your own grip in time. Takes a fucking while. We're looking for a 60-second hollow hold to a V-up, and then a 60-second like proper plank. That's part of our kind of novice. Like I don't even care about adding weight or resistance in the novice phase. And it's funny, just like you guys, we'll get pro athletes who walk in here, they can't perform 20 bodyweight squats. We're looking at the safely, right? You look at take their shoes off, look at the ankles, look at the knees, like look at the back, look at the lump, like start looking at it, you're like, oops, stop. Like, let's stand up against the wall. Let's grab the TRX or stand inside a rack. Like kind of let's restart to recue this stuff. So really more from a mobility. And that's kind of why we pay attention to it here. And I like to say, man, our 65 plus year old clientele has better form than our 25 to 35 year old clientele. Because they don't have the bad habits. They haven't reinforced. Because I was that fucking idiot in the gym, right? Like trying to like bench press like this, like Joe was saying, like without my scapula back. I got it. I'm all like shoulders fucking, rotated forward and shit. Like, no, not like proper fucking form. So of course, like, we download a lot of glitches in the software. So awesome exercise selection. Everyone listening, I'd say definitely jump in and start to like everything we just said here, you guys said here specifically, people can really roll those into programs now. We talked about the different styles of periodization relative to where people are and a lot of other great content. I know it's getting late, guys, and fuck, it feels like we could just really, smoke a joint if it's legal where you are in whatever state you're in. I know Joe and I, it's almost legal here right now from what I understand.
Yep.
I don't know if it's legal down there in Florida. Andy, you're probably high right now, I think.
I think it's legal here.
It is. Yeah. You're like, I think so. Just walk out in your greenhouse, buddy. You'll figure it out. I'm just kidding, Professor. Guys, but I really appreciate you. Now, before I let you go, I want to, definitely shout you out. So everyone should be following you on Instagram right now, of course. And I'm assuming that is the go-to. And let's just get your IG pages back up. So at Dr. Andy Galpin on Instagram. That is Dr. Andy Galpin. At Daru Strong, of course, that is Phil, and at Defranco's Gym. All very good, solid, powerful, easy to remember names. Everyone listening needs to go and follow you guys on Instagram. Follow your journeys. Click on your websites. Go to your websites. Send you contact information. Ask you more questions. Follow all your freaking protocols, which are fucking phenomenal. I mean, just lifetimes of work are built into here. You guys are absolutely amazing. I appreciate you being here. Anything, I mean, nothing needs to be said, but anything you want to share with the audience, with the people, with each other before we hop on off and you guys get back to your families?
So I want to say thank you guys for letting me on, and it's been a pleasure and an honor, to be honest, to be able to speak in front of you guys and as a group. You know what I'm saying? And I've been looking up to you guys for the longest. I know I'm the youngest, so you know.
How old are you?
I'm 32, man.
So years ago, all right, quick story. Years ago, as all kids, I remember, I thought I was the best strength coach in the world when I was 24 years old, right? I'm working with D1 wrestlers, and I'm the fucking big, strong fucking dude myself, 600 plus pound squat. I think I'm the fucking man. And I'm looking around, and there's guys like Louie and Jim Wendler and like Dave Tate and, Paula Quinn and all these other fucking, dudes walking around there, like, who are doing it at a higher level. I'm like, what do these assholes know? But super respectful. I'm like fans of there, like fanboying out about those dudes. But at the same time, and as I would get my voice out, it'd be like, well, you're only 24. What do you know? Dude, I'm fucking stronger than you. Like, I got a whole stable of fucking athletes winning state titles, national titles. Like, I think I fucking know. I know everything, right? Fucking, because we all think we know everything in the beginning. And then we realize we don't know what the fuck we're talking about. But as we kind of go through, I was hired as the head strength coach, Team Quest, Portland, Oregon. I'm sitting in a fucking team meeting. Randy Couture, Matt Lindland, Robert Fowler sitting there, a bunch of the other pros. And I'm the head strength coach of the team. Lindland looks over at me, and I said something about like kind of the group gym. He goes, how old are you? I'm 30. And he goes, oh, so you actually do know what you're talking about. Like, yeah. So yes, I'm 30 years old now. Yes, I fucking do know what I'm talking about. But I just say that because it's funny that there is this kind of, I think it's still a bit of a misconception. Experience, of course, matters. There's a little misconception that anyone in their 20s doesn't really know what they're talking about. And, Andy, you're over 30 years old, right? Okay, just making sure, because clearly you know what the fuck you're talking about. Joe, I think you are the young man in the group, actually. I'm pretty sure 29 years old, holding strong right now. I think we're the same age, right?
Same haircut for the last 20 years.
How old are you?
45.
45. All right, you got me probably by a few months. I'm 44 as I sit here right now.
Oh, yeah, look at us. Close. Catching up.
Close,
when are you turning 45?
April.
All right.
Yeah.
Getting there.
Boom.
Okay.
15?
11th. My wife is the 15th.
Ooh, that's why we got that, similarities here. I always like Dr. Andy Galpin.
I like it.
Yeah, that's cool. That makes a lot of sense. It's funny because, just make that age reference. A lot of coaches out there, man, it's again, I go back to my 5 R's. That's what matters. Don't worry about your age. Don't worry about what people say. If you know what the fuck you're talking about, if you produce results, if you are a person of your word, a person of integrity, man, that's what matters. And then just don't worry about the rest. The resume and the reward, that comes. Focus on the first 3. The last 2 show up.
It is funny, though, how you said, though, in the beginning, I was the same way. You graduate college with an exercise phys degree, you get one certification, you think you know everything. And then as the years go on, the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. And we use that same, at our certification, we use that same white belt mentality kind of story and mentality of always never think you know it all. Always wear that white belt. You could always learn more. There's always someone out there smarter than you, and you should always be. The goal should be to surround yourself with people smarter than you, more experienced than you, so you continue to grow. As soon as you think you know it all, it's a wrap.
That's the truth, man. I'm positive Elon Musk is not the smartest man in Tesla. All right.
Good point.
So that for whatever that's worth. And
I'm super happy that social media wasn't around when I was in my 20s.
Ooh.
It's the same reason. Like you just can't see past yourself there. So I generally feel like the more experience you get, the more times you've actually done it, the less opinionated you tend to get. So a good thing to think. Like I'll tell my students pretty commonly that early in your career, it's not the best for you to be a content provider. Like, I know you want to get your social media following and like, do you think that's important? But one, it's not really. But number 2, now that everything's there forever, maybe you should just spend for 10 years working with athletes and then start to teach other coaches. But maybe 2 years in, it's not the time for you to start teaching coaches.
Yeah. Ooh.
like probably time to just shut up and work right now.
Yeah,
no one should know your first 10 years. No one should know who you are but your clients. Go do shit, and then you will have 10 years worth of content to write about from years 11 to 40. But I couldn't agree with you more with that. Go do shit for 10 years before you start posting stuff on social media. That should be a rule in the industry. You have to actually do shit for 10 years before you're allowed to put coach in your bio.
Yeah.
Or influencer,
Yeah. I do want to say before I forget, Mike, I was really excited when you did this first one with the dietitian side of it and the weight cut stuff. And I can't wait for episode 2 of that to come out when you guys actually start going through things. I learned a lot. I found it very informative. And, this is something that everyone I know for 10 years or more has been like, man, we need to do more of these things where like we need to get around. And the thing is like, oh, we'll do it at the conference. Like we'll get together at this clinic and we'll chat then. And it just, you never find time, and maybe you do over beers, but then you can't remember half the shit next day. And, whatever, too much tequila and whiskey come. So I'm just happy that this can be done in a forum where other people can see it, because I do believe this is how the profession moves forward, is you put multiple minds together. And I think the format will maybe evolve or not or whatever going forward, but this is something I really look forward to. Let's see multiple people in kind of similar areas. And I also think back when I was a kid and stuff, I'm like, I can't even imagine something like this coming out and having this ability to hear all these people and their thoughts on stuff. So I applaud you for I don't know anyone who's really done this yet. It's sort of surprising. But good for you, man. I hope you continue to do it. And that's awesome stuff. I think this is what the industry needs, without a doubt.
I appreciate that, brother. And that's become a goal of mine. As I said earlier, it's really to shine the light on people that I respect, that I listen to. In the way I think if I listen to you guys, if I follow your work, if I click on your videos, if I learn more, if I take notes, well, the people that think I kind of maybe have something interesting to say every so often, well, they probably want to hear the people that I'm influenced by, that I respect, that I look to for answers and insights to really kind of help take that ball and fucking run it further down the field. And why isn't this style of format more popular? Like, I don't have the biggest social media following, podcast following. Like, I have a nice little niche platform, which is amazing community and people, and it's awesome. But at the same time, there's massive platforms out there. And I think what we said earlier is there's this ego of, man, I'm not going to bring on fucking Galpin, because what Galpin works with other fighters too. It's like, dude, like kind of like you, Andy, I was very similar. I was very like, I worked with 5 athletes a year. That was it. Like, that was the way that I worked my best. That was 5 a year. When I was the coach at Team Quest, I was running 40 athletes at a time. It fucking ate me up. And I wasn't at my best personally. I couldn't personally handle that. Now, other guys, Joe and Phil, you've run bigger crews, bigger teams, bigger athletes at once. That's your wire. What's up, big guy? Hello. Hey. So it's different, but I think it's really guys like us where, we go back to my third R. It's your results, or your reputation is your results and who you are as a person, man. And I think our ability to get this information out here, like you're saying, yo, go and fucking hire Phil Daru, man. Go hire Joe Defranco. Like most of the other coaches in the broader fitness world think all of a sudden they're taking your business. That means you're not as good. I'm not as good if someone goes to work with Andy Galpin or Tyler Minton or somebody else. Like, no, man. Like, you should go out there and seek other coaches and greater influences and really start to diversify your own approach, your own education, your own experience base. So I think for me, what I want to do is just share that, like, kind of ego less. I think this is awesome. If I was that kid coming up in my mid-20s, like you had said, this is all I'd be watching. And I think as the time and format kind of goes, and I learn a little bit more, and maybe, hopefully become a little bit better of a host and get maybe a little bit more of a better flow going in time, all of a sudden, I think that clicks in. But this is number 2, just had the dietitians last time, the diet guys, kind of the strength guys this time, and we're all fucking the same, and just we wear a different t-shirt on different days of the week more than anything else, right? So I appreciate you noting that. I have, big plans to do a lot more in my humble ability to do so, and just keep fucking, pointing towards you guys. I know offline I'm asked a lot, who do I think? And it's like, dude, these three guys, were some of the dietitians, beforehand. And there's unfortunately a short list of some others that I respect their ability as practitioners, but also their integrity as humans. And I don't differentiate between the two. You could be, a good practitioner, but not a good person. That means you're a POS in my world. Like, I won't even mention your name unless I'm bagging on you. But, and I don't mention names as much as I probably should. And I don't know that because I'm not that dude, that drama dude. But, I certainly make sure that I let people know what I think on topics. And I think you guys are fucking awesome. So I want everyone who pays attention to my stuff, I want to pay attention to your stuff and push them your way.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure. All right, fellas. Anything else here before we pop off? No.
Good.
Well,
let's do it again.
I appreciate
Let's do it.
Yeah, we got to do a part 2.
Absolutely, part 2. And then maybe part 2, I think what I want to do, like with the diet guys also, is I want to talk about some areas where do we disagree? I think that makes us better coaches. And then I think that might be a very, consumable for the viewer and the listener to kind of hear some counterpoint. We're all, it was funny busting each other's balls, behind the scenes on social media. That's always, it's kind of fun. But having a little bit more of like, dude, why do you do that? I do something completely different. Like, we both have world-class results. That's interesting. It's like the diet guys. It's like, man, I don't cut fiber in our programs. Like, and there's other, RDs out there, some others have a different approach. They cut it completely, and they swear up and down that if you don't cut fiber, well, you're gonna fucking miss weight. It holds it, like, all of my data clearly shows that's not true. Why we operate the way we do, and let's have that chat. Let's really talk about the plus and the minus, and determine when it's right to do, and then when it's maybe not right to do. Kind of have a little more context to the conversation, but. Whatever that might be, and I think what we'll do is we'll shoot around a few topics that might be fun conversations for us. And always the hard part is, and for the listener, I'm aware of the fifth person in the room right now paying attention, is where that kind of like the third rail, where that ego kind of might be for all of us to like come in. So don't want to step on that for sure, but at the same time, I think we're all we have thick enough skin that it doesn't fucking really matter anyway. But to just have that deeper conversation. And I think, Andy, you probably in your circles, you guys really do, not tear each other apart, but you really take the time to tear ideas apart. I think that's really more.
Science is 100% about being your shit torn apart at a professional level. This is what you deal with.
So that's all day, every day, is just like kind of proving yourself wrong, proving your peers wrong, proving like, tried and true like concepts wrong. That's where evolution comes in.
Yeah, the only way you really know if you're onto something is if somebody can attack you fully. That's where you really fine-tune your approach, right? So if you can defend everything, and then almost always within that defense, you realize there's some hole. So I actually think it's in your best interest to have your failures out, to have your limitations exposed. I can't think of a single scientific study we've done where someone hasn't yelled at it, and then like most of the time your general response is to be furious back, but then you always underneath your breath be like, oh, that little fucking point was right. Fuck, all right, let's clean that up next time. Fuck them all. Generally, fuck that guy, but that little part was all right. So I think it's good for everybody. And I don't mind doing that publicly. I also don't mind. One thing we can, as we're wrapping, another idea on that, Mike, is mistakes, failures, stories like that. If we think ahead of time, like what are some ones you're willing to talk about that you can without outing athletes and things like that, so people can hear. I think that's important for youngsters to hear as well.
Yeah, that would actually, I'm thinking, I can't think of any. It's crazy.
Where are you from again? Oh, that's right.
Yeah, but no, that's actually a good one. It's kind of, I think that would actually be a really fun one to listen to, and being open to it. Allowing that out there. But for those listening, it's trying to push, like my athlete story before about that dude just not listening. It doesn't fuck me up at all. Like, that was his issue. That was his life, his career, his family, his God suffering. You know how bad that is to cut weight, to cut weight that hard, suffer that much, have that anxiety, which is, you know, correlated to the amount of miss and the struggle during the cut, of course, which a lot of those, you know, other individuals don't understand the biochemistry behind stress anxiety with regards to weight cutting, of course, with performance, just the physical aspect of performance.
I don't think a lot of people really understand when a fighter misses weight, you don't understand what the last 24 hours probably looked like.
Yeah.
If they miss, something very, very bad happened for a long stretch of time. And I don't mean a mistake. I mean, like, there was some large amounts of suffering in a real bad way. So that's pretty gnarly.
And what sucks is so much suffering for so long to come up 3 pounds over at the end of the day anyway. Isn't that right? Like, in a way, the majority of the time, not every single time, because very rarely some weird things do happen, but the majority of the time, they earned that suffering. That's their penance for fucking up 12, 16, 24 weeks out. They fucked up in the offseason. We use the term, you know, the 52-week weight cut. The weight cut starts a year ago. You know, mentally, you know, just conceptually speaking, you have to live that lifestyle. You're a fucking pro athlete. It's like I always say, look at Kobe Bryant, look at LeBron, look at Tom Brady. Tom Brady doesn't pick up the football 8 weeks before the season starts. Right? In MMA, how many guys and gals do you know that once that fight's over, they don't show back up to the gym in earnest until camp starts again? You know, maybe 12 weeks out or so, if they got a fight coming up, especially as I've seen, the higher up the athlete goes, that happens more often. The young kids are in there too much, but the veterans seem to not be in there enough, especially once they get a couple of those 6-figure paydays. All of a sudden, man, it's hard to get them back into the gym on time. But anyway, that's, you know, we could go back and forth on all this stuff. So I think we have a lot of great concepts for next time to really drill around with. And, you know, we'll format that a little bit offline. I appreciate you guys all for being here. You guys are all fucking savages, studs, and, you know, people that I certainly look up to in my own world. So I appreciate you again.
Thank you, brother. This was awesome. Great talking to all you guys.
Well, appreciate it, Mike. Thank you.
Right on, of course. All right, guys. Good night.
See you, everybody.
Have a great night.